Hello, Sisbalega, compliments of the new season.
I've sent it, Shanas.
You are muted, Sisbalega. We can't hear you.
Are the assigned speaker. Comrades, an appeal, kindly remain muted unless you're the assigned speaker.
Have we started?
He's just sent a message on the chat saying he's being muted.
Okay, he's muted because...
Yeah, no, all I'm saying, he must be told why he's muted.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I'll tell him.
Okay, sis.
Good afternoon to ANC officials, ANC members, the Mthembu family, comrades, compatriots, friends who are joining us from across the country and indeed across the world. Yesterday, we laid to rest one of the most disciplined, hardworking, and beloved son of the African soil and of our movement, Comrade Jackson Mthembu. We will start our memorial service with a national anthem, immediately followed by a prayer led by Father Lawrence Marikula. Father Lawrence Marekula.
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord God, our Father, we thank you for the life of our comrade, Jackson Mthembu, whom you have called from this world to yourself. We believe, Almighty Father, is a merciful God, that you will forgive him all the sins he has committed and welcome him into paradise. As we are gathered here today on his memorial, we ask, Almighty Father, to comfort us with your word, so that whatever we do, we may know that you are closer to us and will never leave us unattended. We ask, Almighty God, that you may continue to bless and continue to comfort his own family, comfort the ANC, those affected by his death, the whole country of South Africa. We ask, Almighty God, through the power of the Holy Spirit, that we may be comforted and give us always hope that we will fight this COVID-19. We ask all this through Jesus Christ, our Lord, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God forever and ever. I will read our reading from the first letter of St. Paul to the Thessalonians. If you believe that Jesus died and rose, so too will God, through Jesus, bring with him those who have fallen asleep. Comrades, fellow South Africans, as we are gathered here this day on the memorial of our comrade Jackson Mthembu, somehow we tend to lose hope because of what is happening around us. But today, through the power of the Holy Spirit, we believe that Jesus Christ is the Lord of the living and of the dead. Even though we die, we will live with him forever. Comrade Jackson accepted Jesus Christ as the Lord and Savior, and also believed that he is with him in paradise. He was baptized, he received his Holy Communion, united with Jesus in every Sunday, and also united with all the sacraments in the church. God, when God calls him, he said yes to God. He responded his last breath, as you know that God is the owner of our soul. When God demands his soul, we have to allow God to continue to call us. As Comrade Jackson answered God's call to eternal life, also as we remain in this world, we must comfort one another. What is important, we are all with him in spirit, because we know that God is always closer to us. And as we remember our comrade who fought for the good of the country, who was always loyal and humble to the ANC Congress, we ask that Almighty Father may give us his same spirit when you look at him to be a good exemplary. And as leaders of the party, as leaders of the country, we may try our best to do what God wants us to do. Jackson Mthembu was a good leader, and he also remained a good South African who died and also fought for the country. I pray that God, through his own experience, may empower us to continue to fight for whatever is right for our country, especially during this time of COVID-19. May God bless this gathering. May God bless those who are going to speak, those who remember him, that whatever we say, we may try our best to comfort those who have been affected by his death. May the soul of Comrade Jackson Mthembu, through the mercy of God, rest in peace. Amen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Father. Indeed, our brother and comrade has run his race. He fought a good fight. Let his soul rest in peace, and let his spirit inspire this and generations to come. I will be co-hosting this memorial service. My name is Gwendolyn Ramokgopa. I'm a member of the NEC, and I'm co-hosting on behalf of the NEC with the ANC Deputy Secretary General, Comrade Jesse Duarte. I take this opportunity to call on the Secretary General, Comrade Ace Magashule, to do the welcome. SG.
Okay. Thank you, Comrade Gwen. And let me also appreciate the presence of DSG, all members of the NEC, and comrades who are going to talk here today. I want to take this opportunity to welcome everybody, to welcome the public, and to once more salute the spirit of Comrade Jackson. I want to say long live the spirit of Comrade Jackson Mthembu, long live. I just want to say, as I welcome all of you, just to tell you a little bit about how I also came to know Comrade Jackson Mthembu. In the 80s, around 83, 84, 85, most of the comrades throughout the country assembled in Johannesburg. Majority of them were in hiding in Johannesburg from what we call now Limpopo. Comrade, I remember Comrade Peter Mukaba, Comrade Jackson, Comrade Eve Mokhale, Comrade Denim Caesar, Comrade Stan Matabate, and many other comrades. And from Gauteng, we remember the likes of in the Val, Comrade Sol Sotezi, Comrade Simon Fouquet, many comrades in the Val, Stomping, Buipatong. We remember those comrades from Northwest, Tate and Nduman Dleleni, Dakota, and many other comrades. In Gauteng here, Comrade Paul, Comrade Nomvola, Comrade Nat, Comrade Rapu. I've seen a lot of the speakers who are going to speak are indeed comrades who know Comrade Jackson Mthembu very well. Ojabu Ngwenya, Bo Branet, Comrade Sophie, and Comrade Nomvola. I remember all those people like the likes of Max Coleman and Audrey Coleman, Comrade Sophie, the late. I remember Comrade Winnie Masisulu, Comrade Dr. Asfat. I remember the likes of Priscilla Jana, Krish Naido, Richard Spoor, David Dyson, Chris Waters. I remember the likes of those journalists like Mette Matladi, Joanne Collins, and many others. I remember those NECC members led by Comrade Eric Molobi, Ahmed Dango. I remember the crowd of four, Nefi Gonwe and Fort Kalata and others. I remember the likes of Tozami Lekweta in the Eastern Cape, Mafatoge from Duncan Village. I remember Paul Varane, Father Mkachwa, Sister Bernard Ngube, Bears Naude. I remember, and I want to dispel the myth that Comrade Jesse Duarte was recruited by Carl Niehaus. That was not the case, and I'm happy that Carl Niehaus clarified that matter. And Comrade Jesse is one of those comrades who was there during the years of struggle, 70s, 80s, and these are the comrades who made the country to be viable. Titus Mafulo, Deacon Marty, Rapu Milikani. I remember the guy called Seko Mufukeng, many others comrades. So I just wanted to give you this history, Abu Samson Doe, to show that all the comrades from all the parts of South Africa knew who Jackson was. Very active, Abu Ifmkwe, Abu Ephraim Mokhale. I just want to say, comrades, with this, I just welcome everybody, and I hope we are going to keep time. I just want to be short, but let Comrade Jackson, the comrades we have worked with, during those days of the United Democratic Front, the days when Oliver Tambo said we must make the country ungovernable, these comrades were there. When we formed organs, rudimentary organs of people's power, these comrades were there. Seiso Muhai, Endis Fohlelo from the Free State, Abu Figile Mbalola, and many other comrades. I may not have actually called their names, comrades Abu Enji, Abu Matole, and Aubrey Mukwena Release Mandela campaign. So you can see that we all, and Comrade Jackson comes from that background of a revolutionary, a comrade who has been, who comes from the trenches, a comrade who has been there throughout the country. That's why he was not just a provincial leader, he was a national figure. And let the spirit of Comrade Jackson rest in peace. Long live the spirit of Comrade Jackson. So therefore, comrades, I welcome all of you. And I hope we will actually send these comrades and make sure that the struggle continues. Life or death, the struggle continues. That's what the generation of Comrade Jackson used to say. Thank you, Comrade Program Director, Comrade Gwen and Comrade Jesse.
Thank you very much, SG. Indeed, Comrade Jackson never asked others to do what he was not prepared to do himself. And these are the words that Dr. Nelson Mandela said in his tribute to Tata Walter Sisulu. And same goes with our Comrade Jackson Mthembu. We have seen outpourings of grief and a celebration of the life of our dear comrade since we got the news of his passing away. From all walks of life, people were reflecting on the roles he played so well and the example of leadership and service that he should always be remembered for and that we should all emulate. I take this opportunity now to call on Banele Mthembu to read the obituary. Shanas, can you please unmute?
Send a message. Send a message. It's working. It's working. It's working. Okay. Yeah. Oh, yes. Okay. Good afternoon. I am Banele Mthembu, and I will be reading the obituary of the late Jackson Mthembu. Minister Jackson Mthembu was born and bred at Squanage Farm in Emalahleni in Mpumalanga on the 5th of June, 1958. He was the firstborn son of Mama Rosie Nantoni Mthembu. He started his schooling at Skoongesig American Board Primary School and Kromkrans Farm School before moving to Elukhanyisweni Secondary School in Emalahleni, where he was a student leader during the 1976 Students' Uprising. Minister Mthembu was an anti-apartheid activist who formed part of the liberation struggle inside of South Africa. He cut his political teeth in student politics in the 1970s, and his activism continued when he was a student at the University of Fort Hare, resulting in his expulsion in 1980. He contributed immensely to the establishment of the Metal and Allied Workers Union, the predecessor of the National Union of Metal Workers, in which he served as a senior shop steward at the Highveld Steel Corporation, where he worked as a training officer and later promoted to be one of the first few Black steel production supervisors in the industry. Minister Mthembu was a leading member of the Emalahleni Civic Association and also led the local branches of the National Education Crisis and the Detainees Parent Support Committee, both affiliates of the then United Democratic Fund. During the state of emergency in 1980s, he was subjected to constant harassment and persecution by the security forces of the apartheid regime, resulting in several months of detention without trial, mostly in solitary confinement. Acts of persecution against the agents of apartheid regime, which included the petrol bombing of his house in Emalahleni and being subject to various forms of torture at police stations. Between 1986 and 1988, he was charged with sabotage, treason, and terrorism, and tried together with 30 other activists from Emalahleni in what was known as the Bethel Terrorism Trial. After his acquittal, the apartheid security police force continued with their harassment and intimidation, which led him to leave Emalahleni and find refuge in Soweto and Alexandra in Gauteng. As an internal exile, which seriously disrupted his family life, he was amongst other hiding places, sheltered by the late Mama Koko, Margaret Stofile, in Soweto. He was elected as the Deputy Regional Security of the UDF in the then Pretoria Witwatersrand Vereeniging region, under the leadership of the late Mama Albertina Sisulu. Through his involvement with South African Council of Churches under the leadership of Reverend Frank Chikane, he joined the Southwest African People Organization, Solidarity Campaign that comprised various civic groups, including the religious community, business and taxi associations under the banner of the UDF. He was part of the UDF and the Progressive Forces Leadership Collective that supported SWAPO's election campaign by providing, among others, minibuses to transport voters during the first democratic elections in what was then Southwest Africa, now Namibia. SWAPO won the elections, which led to the liberation of Namibia from the then apartheid South Africa. Following the unbanning of political parties in 1990, Minister Mthembu was entrusted with the responsibility of leading Emalahleni branch of the ANC between 1990 and 1994. He worked full-time as ANC spokesperson in Mpumalanga and participated as ANC staff component at the Convention for a Democratic South Africa negotiation. He served in several strategic roles, including as a member of the Mpumalanga Provincial Executive Committee. He had been part of the ANC National Executive Committee since 2007. After the first democratic elections in 1994, he was part of the first members of Parliament contingent deployed in the then Senate, now National Council of Provinces, where he contributed to the crafting of the Democratic Constitution of the Republic of South Africa in 1996. He was later appointed as the member of the Executive Council for Public Works, Roads and Transport in Mpumalanga, serving under the successive premiership of Dr. Matthews Posa and Dr. Thabang Makweke. He was the first national spokesperson of the ANC under President Nelson Mandela from 1995 to 1997, and was appointed to the same role again from 2009 to 2014. While based at Luthuli House in Johannesburg, one of the structures he chaired was the ANC Caster Semenya Support Committee, which included the late Mama Winnie Mandela. The responsibility of this committee was to give practical support to Caster against the inhumane treatment, abuse, and discrimination she was subjected to by the International Association of Athletics Federations. During his tenure as the national spokesperson for the ANC, Minister Mthembu led the ANC-NEC subcommittee on communications, which asserted the ANC in the battle of ideas, championing media diversity, transformation, accountability mechanisms. He rejoined Parliament in 2014 and served as the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Environmental Affairs. He was subsequently appointed as the Chief Whip of the ANC from 2016 up to the end of the 5th term of Parliament in 2019. After the 2019 national and provincial elections, he was appointed as the minister in the presidency under the 6th administration led by President Cyril Ramaphosa. As the executive authority, he oversaw the presidency, Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, Statistics South Africa, Statistics South Africa, Government Communication and Information System, as well as the entities Brand South Africa and the Media Development and Diversity Agency. And he also chaired the National Planning Commission. Amongst his cabinet responsibilities, as delegated by President Ramaphosa under the African Union, he led the Presidential Infrastructure Champion Initiative, the National Conventional Arms Control Committee, and many other interministerial committees. In addition, between April and June 2020, Minister Mthembu acted as the Minister of Communication and Digital Technologies. He ensured leadership, stability, and sound financial management in the departments and entities under his leadership. He steered and provided leadership with transparency, commitment, and confidence. Minister Mthembu epitomized the values of unity, selflessness, collective leadership, and honesty with immense kindness and great humility. As a communicator par excellence, he remained a humble servant of the people, always showing patience, humility, respect, and a sense of humor equally with all people. He has left a unique imprint on the type of public service we continue to strive to build and the kind of government communicator South Africa deserves. Minister Mthembu continued living amongst his people in Bombela and in Malahleni, where his ANC member resided even after his appointment as a member of the National Executive. He will always be remembered as a humble, selfless, hardworking, honest, disciplined, consistent, trusted giant, and an outstanding leader, a unifier, a freedom fighter, and an upright, selfless public figure who put his country first. He dedicated his life to our country and its people and worked tirelessly towards creating a better South Africa for all. He was also an activist, a patriot, a community builder, a mentor, a brother, a father, and a husband. His death has robbed our nation of an exemplary leader. Our nation has lost a dedicated and strong defender of our constitutional democracy. Minister Mthembu passed away on Thursday, 21st of January, 2021, from complications related to the coronavirus disease. He is survived by his siblings, wife, Mrs. Thembi Mthembu, their children, and a grandchild. In memory of Minister Mthembu, let us step up our fight against COVID-19. Let us emulate him by putting our nation first. We can do so by making personal contribution to the fight against the COVID-19, which includes wearing a mask in public that covers our nose and mouth, regularly washing our hands with soap and water or an alcohol-based sanitizer, maintaining social distancing of at least 2.5 meters, and avoiding large gatherings, especially in confined spaces. Hamba kahle Mbelasi, wena wavela enyandeni yemikhonto yakwamabaso. Huteni, him, vela, bempensela.
Thank you very much, Banele. Indeed, a tribute to a fallen soldier, someone who died with his boots strapped at the service of our people. And once again, on behalf of our movement, which Comrade Jackson dedicated his life to, our sincerest condolences to the family. Comrades, without further ado, Let us start with reflections on the extraordinary and rich life of Comrade Jackson. Our speakers will span the many roles he played during his 6 decades on this earth. And it is in many ways an important piece of the history of South Africa. We will start with segment with the following 2 speakers. Firstly, Comrade Rapu Molekane, who's joining us from Vienna, Austria, where he is the South African ambassador. He was active with Comrade Jackson Mthembu in the youth and student movements, as well as the United Democratic Front, the UDF, in the 1980s. He will be immediately followed by Comrade Daphne Nkosi, a leading businesswoman today, but during the days of the struggle in the 80s, she played an important role in a structure called the Detainees Parents Support Committee, supporting political detainees and prisoners, as well as their families. I'll invite Comrade Ambassador Rapu Molekane to make his tribute.
Program directors, leadership of the movement, Comrade. Since his departure, a lot has been said about the character, stature, values that Comrade Jackson Mthembu embodied, emulated, lived up to, and embraced during his life and times. Many of these traits have an upbringing and training. Growing up within the Christian families and finding training, exposure, and being steeped in the contextual liberation theology, which was tempered with the Marxist theory, shaped our world out on that something was very wrong with the society, the community, and country that we lived in, and that something needed to be done to change it. It was simply not right that we lived in separate residential areas, went to different schools, compatriots, that our parents were laborers serving white masters, that we as African youth could only be caddies for whites and not play, etc., which had been the life experience of many of the African youth. We could not explain this phenomenon through pinpointing them to laws of apartheid or how society was organized until our exposure to the young Christian students, the young Christian workers, and later the Congress of South African Students, COSAS. Some of us, though young and adventurous, were lucky to have had activists in families and in close proximity, which exposed us to the Soweto Student Representative Council in Soweto, to SAZIM, South African Student Movement, and in Soweto again to the Soweto Student League, the SSL, which were, of course, mostly forerunners to the formation of COSAS in 1979. I recall leaders like Comrade George Nene, Comrade Stan Nkosi, Comrade Ntate Mthenjani, Comrade from the Mashinini family like Rox and Sietsi, and of course, Me June Shabangu, who was also later in the Free South Africa, a premier of the Free State. She was a teacher in one of the youth clubs in Soweto. I first encountered Comrade Jackson at Mayfair at the headquarters of the Young Christian Workers and Young Christian Students he had come to a training session which was combined for both organizations. But there were also comrades from other organizations, and I can say Comrade Jesse Duarte was an active participant in this organization and in these workshops. I got attracted to Comrade Jackson because I was so much interested in knowing more about the Eastern Transvaal. The next time we met was yet at another national training session at Welgespreid, again jointly with COSAS, YCS, YCW, SUKA. Leading figures at the event that one can recall include comrades like Peter Manchidi, may his soul rest in peace. Vincent Williams from Cape Town was the chairperson of YCS. Comrade Sidiso Matona, who was the national organizer of COSAS. Comrade Pet Lipunya, Comrade Chikani, Comrade Pet Mashiani, Sophie Masite, may her soul rest in peace. Father Albert Nolan, Koki from Cape Town, Joe from Mapetla, Tom Wasp, Brajo from Kagiso, may his soul rest in peace, and many, many other comrades. We spent time imbibing and learning the tools of analysis, the methodology of analyzing the situation called See, Judge, and Act. We also learned the history of the South African struggle through books like Time Longer Than Rope and Gold and Workers. These two books came to be our umkhabulo, in addition to extracts from books about struggles in other countries, as well as Maurice Comthorpe, 3 volumes, The Theory of Knowledge, Dialectical Materialism, and Historical Materialism. I see Comrade Daphne will be on the program and she will capture the other interaction that we had with the Eastern Transvaal cadres, and in particular with Comrade Jackson Mthembu. And I would like to associate myself in advance with those experiences. At a time in the 80s, I was quite very young and much adventurous, guided and under the tutelage of, among others, the likes of Comrade Vincent Mohani, whom I accompanied to launch the Lowveld youth movement, which took place at a time when the regime declared the state of emergency in 1985. I recall very vividly that Comrade Vince, as he was known, and I did not go to Lingelihle Township in Craddock for the burial of the comrades popularly known as the Craddock Four, Comrade Fort Kalata, Matthew Goniwe, Stelo Mhlauli, and Sparrow Mkondo. These leaders of the UDF and Cradora were ambushed and assassinated by the murderous South African police and mercenaries of the South African Defence Force at Blue Water Bay outside Port Elizabeth. Comrade Vince and I drove to Nelspruit to launch the Lowveld youth movement, Loyomo, and to hold consultations with the ANC from Mozambique and Swaziland. We stopped at Witbank, met comrades there, including Comrade Jackson and Comrade Pat. We stopped also at Waterfall Boven. We also had meetings with the KwaNdebele leadership, including the Chief Minister then, Mr. Mahlangu and Steve Mabona. We also had meetings with Enos Mabuza, the Chief Minister of Kangwani Homeland. The launch of Loyomo went ahead without any hitch or disturbance from the Kongwani Bantustan authorities. It took place right opposite the police station in Kanyamazane, the same hall that would host the first and last Congress of the South African Youth Congress. We had support from comrades like Comrade Matthew Sposa, Comrade Mujapelu, and Comrade Thabo Mamiepa, Dr. Mamiepa. In addition to names of comrades that were mentioned or will be mentioned by Comrade Daphne, one could recall comrades like Joe Nkuna, Ntombi Shope, may her soul rest in peace, Comrade Kendif Mashiho, Comrade Pat Sibanda, of course, Comrade Pax Mankashana, may also his soul rest in peace. Even this gold-read Kadi of the EFF was a young Congress activist in Kanyamazane. Comrade Jackson Mthembu was in the leadership of the Witbank Youth Congress and other mass democratic formation, including the unemployed youth of Emalahleni, Abolova, which organized some significant activities that led to major detentions and eventual apartheid show trials that led to convictions of key cadres from the area, but also survival and acquittal of others. Comrade Jackson was among the survivors from these apartheid show trials. He was now a marked man, a target of the system. Comrade Mandla Dlamini reminds me that in 1984, when our structures were infiltrated heavily by the notorious CCB, the enemy spread falsehoods and rumors that Comrade Jackson was an enemy agent. The enemy set gangsters on Comrade Jackson and urgent provocateurs who attempted to assassinate him. Fortunately, the progressive youth saved Comrade Jackson's life, and the real enemy agent were unmasked by our movement. It should be recalled that this was the time of ungovernability and the decade of liberation as declared by the ANC. The enemy, led by P.W. Botha, also had declared total onslaught against the progressive movement, and many comrades disappeared and were killed. Undeterred, Comrade Jackson came to Southern Transvaal in Johannesburg and joined the South African Council of Churches and later the Detainee Parent Support Committee. These bodies, besides supporting families of detainees with moral support, they organized legal advice and representation, material support like buying essentials like groceries for families of detainees and for detainees themselves, including clothing and other basic necessities. Also importantly, these bodies, the SACC and the DPSC, exposed the regime by keeping the nation and the world informed about the apartheid atrocities and injustices. They also provided knowledge on the rights of detainees under the infamous internal security laws. Comrade Jackson became an expert in unraveling and explaining these apartheid laws. With this knowledge, comrades, both in their own areas and also in internal exile, became knowledgeable, and this minimized their exposure from incriminating themselves and others, as well as protecting our structures. the headquarters of this organization, the SACC, at Khotso House, Dara House.
If you can summarize to give others an opportunity.
Okay.
Just conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Gwen. We got involved in the establishment of the Federation of Transvaal Women in the Eastern Transvaal with Comrade Jackson. But one of the other important projects that we got involved in was the opening of the memorial of Comrade Samora Machel in Mbuzini. Let me conclude by conveying my deepest condolences to the family, especially the wife and children, his siblings, relatives, and comrades and friends of Comrade Jackson. Lalo ngokolo mkhonto. Amandla.
Program Director, the Mthembu family, members of the National Executive Committee, comrades and friends. I first met Comrade Jackson Mthembu in 1985 while I was working for the DPSC. We met in the context of the struggle against apartheid. The 1985-86 period was a particularly difficult phase of the struggle because, like the dying horse that it was, the regime had intensified its repression. For a brief period, it had gained somewhat of an upper hand with the signing of the Nkomati Accord with the Mozambican government the year before. Many of our comrades became a hybrid of nomads and internally displaced persons who were always on the run from the brutal apartheid security establishment. The movement responded to the regime's repressive measures by intensifying the struggle, and it was in this context that about 15 activists from the Witbank area, amongst them Jackson and Bani Mashego, came to Johannesburg after being released from detention. Comrade Jackson later got a job at the Dependence Conference of the South African Council of Churches, where he worked closely with people like Wombier and Dr. Kisner. As an activist of the United Democratic Front, he was by definition a member of several of the UDF's affiliate organizations and an important player in the Eastern Transvaal underground regional machinery. Like other comrades who have reflected on his life, I soon got to know Jackson as a warm and humble person who possessed a keen sense of humor. He cared deeply about the plight of his fellow persons. Together with his earth-shaking laughter, these qualities were a mirror of his fulcrum and inner peace. In this sense, Comrade Jackson was by no means a perfect human being, embodied a quality which unfortunately died the moment it became acceptable, that our politics are a carrier more than an arena of national service. Che Guevara summed it best when he said, and I quote, "At the risk of seeming ridiculous, let me say that the true revolutionary is guided by a great feeling of love. It is impossible to think of a genuine revolutionary lacking this quality," close quote. Needless to say that in the South African and ANC context today, one does indeed sound ridiculous to affirm this perspective, because many in our ranks, and I may dare say the leadership, simply fall short of this criterion amongst the criteria of what it means to be a revolutionary. For Comrade Jackson, membership of the ANC was not so that he would one day ascend to political office. It was from the beginning until the end of his breath about service to the country. Unlike today, during the 1980s when Comrade Jackson began his political activism, the reward to one's involvement in the struggle was detention, torture, and sometimes death. Yesterday, I saw several social media posts of a photograph of Comrade Jackson and his dear wife, Thembi, in a nursing sister uniform. Nearly each and every one of the young people who have made comments on social media have expressed both disbelief and deep respect of the fact that the wife of a minister, and not just any minister, but a minister in the presidency, could remain a nurse at a local clinic while her husband was in the engine room of power. Some of them have gone as far as to suggest that this is unthinkable in the ANC. Activists of my generation undoubtedly understand the indictment of this observation on the ANC as a whole. It tells us a lot about the wrongs of our ways, which are contrary to the expectations of the masses of our people. No doubt, as the ANC tries to renew itself, we should be looking for a member and leader of Comrade Jackson's hue and mindset. We should be looking for the type of leader who embodies the values of Farcater a character in Osemani's and Benne's 1960 novel, God's Beads of Wood, who implores on his comrades, and I quote, to act so that no one dares to strike you because he knows that you speak the truth, to act so that you can no longer be arrested because you are asking for the right to leave, to act so that all of this will end, both here and elsewhere. That is what should be in your thoughts. That is what you must explain to that others, so that you will never again be forced to bow down before anyone, but also so that no one shall be forced to bow down before you. Fortunately for us, the ANC and South Africa still has activists of this mode. They have sadly been demobilized, sidelined and ostracized by a few self-serving people who continue to soil the image of the ANC and conspire against the progress of the country as a whole. We need leaders who can be respected and believed, because there is no deficit between what they say and what they do. This is more so because we are living through the most challenging period since the turn of the 21st century 2 decades ago. Hundreds and thousands of people throughout the world are perishing because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Our country, South Africa, has not been spared. Our meeting this afternoon is testimony to the seismic effects of COVID-19. Our fellow comrade in arms, Comrade Jackson Mthembu, succumbs to the disease. He joins 40 fellow South Africans who have sadly so far perished after being infected by the virus. Obviously, this underscores the urgency with which our government should procure and make the vaccine available to all South Africans. In the meantime, we should all remind one another of the basics: wear a mask, wash your hands, maintain physical distance. This message can only be carried by leaders whom the people respect. To Comrade Jackson, may your beautiful soul rest in peace. You have run the race and you have conquered. Thank you. Program Director,
Comrade
the Mthembu family, members of the National Executive Committee,
been able to
comrades
give us
and
a very
friends. I first met
good
Comrade Jackson
understanding of the
Mthembu in
period of the
1985
life and times
while I was
of
working for the
Comrade Jackson.
DPSC.
During the period of the
we are, as the
and
South
indeed,
African,
it's still a lot of history that we have to unpack. Comrade Jackson was known to all of us as Broer. My last message from Comrade Jackson was when he was in hospital, and his message to me was, Broer, we must overcome this COVID-19. With that having been said, I would very much like now to tell you that we're going on to another segment of his life. The next three speakers will be speaking about Comrade Jackson's life as a detainee. And the first speaker that we will have is Dr. Seth Cooper. Like many activists of his time, young and old, Comrade Jackson spent time in prison and in detention. As we heard from Comrade Daphne and others, we will therefore hear from Dr. Seth Cooper, a speaker from the Ex-Political Prisoners Association, about their reflections on Comrade Jackson. Dr. Cooper, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. The tragic news that Comrade Jackson Mthembu had succumbed to the coronavirus was not only received with shock and disbelief by the Ex-Political Prisoners Association, but was accompanied by spontaneous expressions of genuine grief and roundly positive sentiments from across South African society. His unexpected passing brings the deadly reality of these terrible and trying times poignantly closer to all of us, whether we're in government or not, black and white, urban and rural, whatever our political persuasion is, whether we're part of the few who are rich or whether we're part of the majority who mostly exist in grinding poverty. The ex-political prisoners believe that if we don't face this pandemic together, using all the resources available, we will lose more critical leadership that we cannot return from. The Ex-Political Prisoners Association represents political prisoners after the ANC and PAC were banned in 1960, through the 1976 generation to those who continued to struggle until the early 1990s in the quest for creating a better country for all of us. We have been deeply affected by the immeasurable loss of Comrade Mthembu during this dangerous, fractious period in our young democracy. We affirm that he was truly a man of the people who retained his skills and his inimitable links with every part of society that he engaged with, impacting all of us in various ways. He was cut of that rare cloth woven from scarce ingredients that are woefully needed at this period of our country's greatest need. He possessed that firm strength of character, quick wit, and beguiling charm in the face of immense challenges, including various intolerable, brutal detentions. He was comfortable in his skin and beliefs, allowing his superb and essential leadership qualities to disarm his critics and win over skeptics. He gave true meaning to that mantra of, I was involved in the struggle, not for myself, but for the benefit of our people and our country. The Ex-Political Prisoners Association fervently desires that we had more of his caliber in our fragile democracy and fractured nation struggling to come of age. And we wish to thank his family, his friends, his comrades, and his community for sharing the singular person who touched so many of us across the political spectrum and in all walks of life. Lalangokolo Mvelase.
Thank you very much, Asats. The next speaker is a person of true distinction. At the time when Comrade Jackson Mthembu was director at the South African Council of Churches, Dr. Brigalia Baum was Deputy General Secretary of the South African Council of Churches, and she will reflect on this time. Dr. Baum is, of course, best known as a chairperson of the Independent Electoral Commission, a position she held with distinction, and during which she also worked with Comrade Jackson in different capacities. Dr. Baum, you have the floor.
We are, as the South African Council of Churches, also grieving and mourning for this young man whom we refer to as our own. He was part of a team those days when he was in his 30s, the first contact being in the end of 88 and 89, worked with the South African Council of Churches. They were a large team of young South Africans who were really referred to as activists. But they were activists who really were grounded very much into the values of the Council of Churches. And that is the values of the fear of God, the values of being truthful, even a work ethic, which was very important. I was fortunate that I worked with him and Saki Matosoma in the communications department of the SACC. And one of his responsibilities was to be in touch with the people on the ground, because we had to report on a regular basis, not only to report to the churches in South Africa, but we had many of our international people, anti-apartheid groups outside working with us. We also had our donors who were our supporters. And so a lot of information on the ground related to detainees, information related to their families, information related to those who were being tortured. A lot of information, we were relying on him because he was part of that team that was touched to people on a day-to-day basis. One of his greatest gifts is that he found it very easy to love, to care for people, and to share himself. Found it easy to be there with the people and would bring the information and relate to us. And so in the later years, it was a joy to see him being one of the persons who would become our leaders in the democratic South Africa. One important event, but there are many of events, but I can't resist to tell the story, when he went to Namibia, assisting COSATU, and he was in charge, and they were managing just over 200, something like that, 200 buses. And they arrived in Namibia because we were partly sponsoring that as the South African Council of Churches and working partnership with it. And he had taken over. He had taken over Namibia and was there with COSATU, and I had to dig him out to get him out of the country. But later years also, I was proud that we could work with him as the Electoral Commission of South Africa. We were asked by President Thabo Mbeki to assist the people of Mozambique. And there he was assisting us because of their proximity to Mozambique. We mourn for him, but we are grateful to God for his life. We're grateful that he has been able to make such a contribution to the people of South Africa, and for all the sacrifices he had to make, especially in the early days when it was very difficult for our young activists to survive. God bless him.
Thank you very much, Dr. Baum. You remind us so starkly of the Resolution 435 and Mati Atasari and the song that Comrade Jackson taught us to sing as many made their way to Namibia to support the democratic elections of Namibia and his role in the South African Council of Churches and support to detainees. With so many things, our families were visited as well by people like Comrade Jackson. It is now a privilege to call to the podium a person who worked with Comrade Jackson as a young woman. She worked with him in the structures of the United Democratic Front during the 1980s, and she is, of course, now heading our organizing department in the ANC. I call Comrade Nomvula Mukunyani to take the platform.
Thank you very much, Comrade Deputy Secretary General of the African National Congress, the former Provincial Secretary of the Federation of Transvaal Women, Comrade Jessie Duarte, members and leaders of the African National Congress. I saw the SG, I've seen also our veterans, Sprigelia, and many others who are here today, fellow South Africans. Indeed, death ends a life, but death does not end a relationship. And hence, all of us believe in the mantra that Comrade Jackson's spirit will continue to live amongst us. Let me take this opportunity to acknowledge you, Sistembi, Nabantwana Nomzugulwane, Sitakwehlanga Lungehlanga. Acknowledge the religious people, representatives who are here, as well as members of the public. I met Comrade Jackson through struggle in the trenches of our own liberation movement, then under the United Democratic Front, as many comrades have already spoken about this. But of importance, what brought Comrade Jackson closer to me and developed a relationship that we continued to have, and I believe through his spirit will continue to have, was our own Catholic upbringing, and through our activism in the Young Christian Student, as well as the historic connection with our senior comrades in our communities who were members and leaders of the South African Student Movement, SASM. As we interacted with Comrade Jackson, we worked very closely with the Institute for Contextual Theology, as well as working with the Young Christian Workers. We then, out of our struggle and being in the trenches, found one another in the founding of the United Democratic Front and through our civic movements, when at my early age, I was also the publicity secretary of the Kruger's President's organization. Comrade Jackson was a member of the Emalahleni Civic Organization, and having moved and became one of those who ran into the then Southern Transvaal, where we were together with the likes of the Treasurer General, Comrade Paul Mashatile, Comrade Jackson became one of our own, straddling between Alexander and Soweto. Of importance, Comrade Jackson was consciously committed not only to organizing, but organizing for a particular cause, organizing to realize a particular product. And our work was to organize the unorganized, to organize our communities on common issues. Some of them Comrade Rapu had alluded to, the struggle for a non-racial, democratic, non-sexist, and prosperous South Africa. And through our work on the ground, we had to contextualize what exactly non-racialism stands for, what exactly non-sexism stands for. And we worked with Comrade Jackson as a man who'd never actually had reservations about organizing women. And as we were working under the Federation of Transvaal Women, an affiliate of the UDF, we worked with the likes of Comrade Chichi, comrades like Ntombi, comrades like Joyce Mashamba, Comrade Maristella in Limpopo. And our responsibilities were to form advice centers, to make sure that we've got the daycare centers, that behind them we were able to mobilize women to join the Federation of Transvaal Women. We went through the length and breadth of the country, working Nabo or Comrade Jackson Mthembu. In the process, we then crossed paths in the formation of COSATU, the Congress of South African Trade Unions, as young workers when Comrade Jackson was also a shop steward. We continued to interact with Comrade Jackson under the leadership of the likes of Comrade Samson Doe, Comrade Vali Musa, Comrade Yasmin Duarte, Sis O'Hara Diseko, organizing our civics and working under the supervision and guide of Umamu Albertina Sisulu. We formed the teams that worked towards the NECC that then helped us to deal with the education crisis in the country. Of importance that I would forever remember about Comrade Jackson is that he understood that what is of importance is that of ensuring that we get every community to be organized, make sure that community issues become part of the struggle that we'll pursue, and making our people to understand what exactly and who our enemy is. He never also survived the atrocities of the apartheid system. There were moments, Comrade Rapu spoke about, those moments where agent provocateurs who masqueraded as revolutionaries infiltrated our structures and wanted to character assassinate Comrade Jackson. Up until today, he remained unshaken. And I do believe that one of the challenges today is for us to be quite very careful about those kind of characters who want to undermine the cause for organizational renewal, for unity, for the rebuilding of the African National Congress. That in his honor, in his memory, we must commit to fight against gender-based violence and femicide. We must wear our masks, we must wash our hands, we must apply social distance, but of importance, we must accept that we will not see each other, we will not be together, just like Comrade Jackson could not be with his family when he had to become an internal exile here in Gauteng, that we will not be together, not because we no longer love one another, but we can't be together because we have to come together again and pursue our revolution under a new normal. And this invisible enemy that has robbed us of Comrade Jackson must actually be confronted head-on. A revolution is a struggle to the death between the future and the past. And that is Comrade Jackson, a revolutionary to the end. I thank you.
So he had a way of, even within the ANC, of saying to us as comrades, let us focus. We're now getting into a part of life of Comrade Jackson, being a father, a brother, a husband, an uncle, a leader, a public servant, and playing many other roles. But above all, he is remembered as one of the many legendary communicators that the ANC has produced. To reflect on the role he played as a communicator across different generations, we will have a few speakers. But I remember also during this period, I served with him on the NEC Support Kasta Mokgadi Seminya campaign. I will call now upon Comrade Nomfanelo Kota, a youth leader from the Youth League, where she was mentored by Comrade Jackson and went on to work with him in the DIP. And Nomfanelo is now the spokesperson of the ANC caucus in Parliament. She'll be followed by Mr. Sbu Ngalwa, chairperson of SANEF, who will reflect on the relationship of Comrade Jackson and the media. This will be followed by two other comrades who worked in communication with Comrade Jackson, an NEC member, Comrade Zizi Kodwa, a member of the NEC, and he immediately after him, also another member of the ANC, Comrade Lindi Wezulu. I will not come in between. I'm asking that we take just 3 minutes of reflection. If you see me coming to the podium, I ask that you summarize so that we can be able to take through all the speakers on this program as we celebrate indeed a life well lived. Comrade Nomfanelo.
Thank you, Comrade Gwen. It is quite telling that we meet on the eve of the 20th anniversary of the launch of ANC Today, our online weekly publication, which enabled the ANC to communicate directly with the people of South Africa. This was on the 26th of January in 2001. It is also quite apt that we meet during the 25th anniversary of the adoption of the ComTask report adopted by our government in 1996. It is tragic that many of the tasks in that communications Bible remains unimplemented till today. I first met Comrade Jackson through Comrade Jabungwenya, who Comrade Rabu Mulikane spoke about. We were at a YCS workshop in Mayfair, and Comrade Jabu had made it a point that there was this person from Mpumalanga that he wanted me to meet. And people who know Comrade Jabu would know that was his nature. Our paths later crossed when Comrade Jackson formed part of the ANC subcommittee on communications at different times. That team had the likes of Comrade Sangimteng Mahangele, Dunsani Makaya, Lindwe Zulu, Smart Monyama, and many more. Joel Nishitenze, Tony True. These were the people who mentored us in the art and craft of communication. Comrade Jackson, at all given times, was at the heart of the communication architecture, not only in the ANC machinery, but also in government communication. He had the heart and the beat of government communications. And clerk of Comrade Ronnie Mamweba on the 12th of July 2019. Comrade Jackson stated that in renaming the press room at GCIS as government, we're making a statement of intent, challenging all communicators to carry the torch of communications directly with the people. He further said that government communicators must not be the news, must not be celebrities, must be available at all times to listen to the needs of our people. We operated during the days of Amafex, long before we had the digital technology that we have today. Comrade Jackson would have loved to see us taking many innovations forward within the African National Congress. I stand here today speaking on behalf of the generation of Phakamile Mankashana, of Mcebisi Bata, of Prince Msuthu, of Ian Matikoto, of Gert Wetboy, of Pingi Mukoto, of Bukani Mbele, and of Mlungisi Ndlela, Donovan Klute. As someone who interacted with Comrade Jackson at head office, once more I want to salute him on behalf of Abolin who were at the library, which was our main resource center. Comrade Nazidanga. Comrade Smart should have taken this role. Comrade Thabo Masebe should have spoken here today. But Comrade Jackson had something very special about him. He empowered women, especially young women. You look in his office in government today with Comrade Wima Nyandela, the then Kusela Tiko, Noneba Mshawi. He made sure that his team has young, capable, and able young women who can be able to speak for the movement, to show the many complexities of the ANC. We've lost a giant, we've lost an orator, we've lost a teacher and a mentor. Ngesibenze ngantoni na ke kade utsho uMqhayi athi ngamatholo duna ebesinesibenze ngawo nakaloko nje sithi mvela sihamba kakuhle usibulisele kulamaqabane eDIN abo Comrade Vote First September nabanye. We will miss your guidance, we'll miss your wisdom. You were a confidant to many of us. Bosingolisa Kasisona, you were able to tell us and point us.
Thank you very much.
We'll miss your learnings and your teachings. Ours is to pick up your spirit.
Sbu, Mr. Sbu Ngalwa from SANEF.
Yes, thank you, Program Director. To the leadership of the ANC, I hope you can hear me, and those joining us from other parts of the country. On behalf of SANEF, I'd like to convey our heartfelt condolences on the passing of your fellow comrade and leader, Babu Mvelase Jackson Mthembu. Program Director, I must make it clear from the outset that for me, it wasn't that difficult to agree to the request to participate in this memorial service. And I'm sure that when the ANC's communications team decided to invite SANEF, it was because of the appreciation of the kind of relationship that Mvelase enjoyed with his South African media colleagues. I'm sure though, on any other day, had it been anyone else, God forbid, I'm sure I would have needed a little bit of more cajoling, maybe a nudge here and a push there. But because it was Mvelase, I did not think twice, because we all know of the respect he commanded. I can say that the ANC's relationship with the media has been described by some as robust, but I would say that it has been difficult at times. But I do believe that given those dynamics, we are able to find common ground. We have been able to do so, and also appreciate the work that each of us do. I think the fact that Mvelase became ANC spokesperson at the time when the relationship with the media was at an all-time low was perhaps a blessing in disguise, because that was just after 2007 and after the ANC had adopted the resolution on the media tribunal. I'm glad that that day never dawned. I think we all understand the relationship that we have, that as the media and politicians, we're not meant to be friends, but we always have to tolerate each other. And Mvelase understood that. And that in honor of Mvelase, I think I would call upon all of us to work towards that common goal of advancing our young democracy. And I think we all understand that media freedom is at the heart of that. Program Director, there are not many people who can be spoken of in similar vein as we have done with Mvelase. He was indeed special. He treated every journalist with respect. I'm sure I'm young enough to have been one of his children, but he always called me Mnganwam and had a way of speaking, of raising his issues without actually being disrespectful. We've all heard of how humble and accommodating he was to journalists, both young and old, and how much he believed that in the need to communicate no matter how difficult the situation. He showed us that we can all disagree, but not be disrespectful. We can argue without being enemies. Through the example of Jackson, Program Director, we all know that the ANC is capable of producing leaders who genuinely care about the advancement of the poor. Leaders who remain humble and are honest, and leaders who know when to apologize. At the end of the day, we know that he was an advocate for media freedom. He believed that for its own survival, the ANC needs to be held accountable and held to scrutiny. At the time of his passing, I must say, Program Director, Mvelase was leading a government task team that had initiated discussions with SANEF on how to begin efforts to save the South African media from further destruction. We have seen what COVID-19 has done to the industry. We have seen how newsrooms are shrinking and how the shrinking newsrooms and also the closure of some publications is contributing to the poorer content that is being produced. So we're saying as SANEF, there's no better time than now to have a strong and robust media. For our democracy to thrive, we need a strong and a viable media. And we are aware of the ethical lapses in our own industry. It is for that reason that SANEF initiated an independent panel that recently produced a report that was released last week. We invite you, ladies and gentlemen, and members of the ANC and the leadership, to engage with that report, to make inputs and take forward the work that Mvelase had started, to be part of efforts to build the media industry in this country. And this is not about protecting big companies or the status quo, but we need honest conversations on how best to protect the entire media industry, the small players, and ensure that indigenous languages are promoted. With that, Program Director, I thank you for the time you've given us to pay tribute to Mvelase. May his beautiful soul rest in peace. Lala ngoxolo Mvelase. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Comrade Koto.
Program Directors, Comrade Gwendolyn, Comrade Yasmin, and officials who are joining us today. To those of us who work closely with Comrade Jackson Mthembu, it still feels surreal that yesterday we committed to the soil of his forefathers the mortal remains of this distinguished leader of our movement. A lot has been said, because like many towering figures before him in the history of our revolution, he too personified the historic struggle against evil system of apartheid. But even more, he personified the aspirations of all our people as led by the liberation movement that he loved so much, the African National Congress. Comrade Jackson was ANC through and through, and his presence wherever he went, he was synonymous. It was synonymous with the flag of the ANC. In him, the people, including journalists, saw the ANC. He was a caliber of whom we could say his blood was black, green, and gold. Without any fear of self-contradiction, this was because Comrade Jackson exemplified the best of what ANC-TIP should be all about. Through his experience in the trenches of struggle, he learned and understood very well the importance of communication as an important integral tool to advance the struggle. For him, the struggle could only be advanced when the ANC marched in unison with the masses. To him, lies were never a room divider, between the ANC leadership of society and the masses of our people. Whilst historically, we had luminaries such as Pixley Isaiah Seme, Mamu Charlotte Maxeke, Mamu Winnie Madikizela Mandela, and countless others, as part of the advanced minds and the vanguard of our revolution, their profound thinking and collective decisions had to be communicated. This task was left to comrades such as Jackson to ensure that important decisions were communicated to the masses of the people, because they were the most important agents of the revolution. It was no coincidence, therefore, that on the very dawn of our democracy in 1994, Comrade Jackson was among others who were entrusted with a huge responsibility to be the main communicator of the ANC as its national spokesperson. Comrade Jackson Mthembu handled this task with diligence at a time when the ANC was still navigating its way around ascendancy to power. As many will recall, this was a period of nascent democracy, our country pregnant with hopes of the better future. Comrade Jackson had to communicate what the ANC stood for under a peculiar democratic architecture. When it seemed the will of the people was somehow being undermined by apartheid forces who refused to accept the change. As I've indicated, Comrade Jackson exemplified what was to be taught to every communicator, a humble servant of the people who knew that the media plays an important role in a democratic society. He understood that in a democracy, there could be a myriad of views of any subject, politically and ideologically, all competing for hegemony in the public discourse. His was to contest in a democratic space for the hegemony of the ANC's views at all material times. First and foremost, Comrade Jackson was a revolutionary steeped in the ideological paradigm that sought to recast historic South Africa, social, economic, and political landscape into the image of our historical aspiration as entailed in the Freedom Charter. He understood, therefore, that the media was an important part of our constitutional dispensation, and that despite any competing political ideological views, it must be accorded its due status in our democracy. In this way, we had to consolidate and solidify the culture wherein the media would not be treated like an irritation or a skunk to government as it has been under the notorious presidency of former US President Trump. In practical ways, Comrade Jackson taught us that a free media is not only a product of our constitutionalism, but also a friend to our democracy. He left the legacy that journalists are not part of the NM camp, but also an ally of democratization process. Accordingly, I will fail surfacing if I do not mention a very important that is communication, therefore, in the context of what Jackson would stood for. It is not to spin the truth, as Comrade Jackson would tell the truth, even when it was in fact a bitter pill to swallow even in the ANC. If we were to beat about the bush, around the bush, the very unacceptable behavior of the Premier of Mpumalanga, ironically during the Jackson Mthembu send-off yesterday, when she disregarded regulations on wearing of masks to combat the spread of COVID-19. What was painful for many people as they paid homage to Comrade Jackson, as broadcasted in all national TV channels, was that Comrade Jackson was not only in the forefront of advocating the importance of adherence to the regulations to combat, but also ironically succumbed to it. Therefore, for someone to actually parade the opposite with regards to wearing of masks at this solemn send-off, at his solemn send-off, was an insult to his memory. The news today are not about celebrating the life of Jackson, are about this unavoidable incident. Truth was what constituted communication to you, my mentor. He spoke of truth to our revolution. He spoke of truth that says the legacy of apartheid, whose structural reality still haunt our transformation agenda and must be resolved with utmost urgency. He spoke the truth to the resolution of the historic injustice visited our people that cannot be postponed any longer. He spoke the truth that the ANC can only achieve its revolutionary goals when it is united force. He spoke the truth that charlatans and opportunists have no place in the ANC. He vindicated the basic fact that the ANC is a true champion of the aspirations of our people. He died with his boots on, fighting for the better life of all our people. Ours is to pick up his spear and continue to forge a communication strategy that will become a pillar towards the resolution of the contradictions of the past as we march on without fail towards the envisaged national democratic society.
Thank you.
Those involved in direct communication in the African National Congress and in government may take cue from his legacy that to be a communicator is to advance the ends of a revolution without subverting the architecture of democracy, particularly its constitution. That is why Comrade Jackson was called.
Please conclude. Thank you. Thank you, my comrade. Please conclude, leader.
Ultimately, the ultimate test is whether or not objectives of our communication can indeed be echoed by the masses as translated into their improved living. Thank you very much.
Comrade Lindiwe Zulu.
Thank you very much, program directors. Thank you very much, leaders of the African National Congress present here, leaders of different formations who are present here. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I am really happy that I was given the opportunity to speak today. Memories don't live like people do. They always stay with us. I'm hoping that the memories of all the expressions that have been delivered by the different speakers today will be the memories that will propel us to continue the struggle and do what Comrade Jackson would have done had he managed to live longer, to make sure that our people are liberated, to make sure that we are leaders who Comrade Jackson Mthembu can always be proud of. Memories don't live like people do. They always stay with us. And I can now recall with pride that booming laugh, and a laugh that came easy to him, just like seriousness came very easy to Comrade Jackson. I would know his mood and frame of mind just from listening to how he would call out whenever we met, either in government or in ANC meetings. When he says, Malindi, I would know that I'm in good books. When he would say, Mganwam Chomam, I would know that nothing has gone wrong. But the minute he called me comrade, I would know that I was in trouble and needed to look around me to see what I had done wrong. Discipline, straightforward, what you saw is what you got from Comrade Jackson. Today, when I was reading through his biography, I saw that Google already changed very quickly to say that he was a political leader in South Africa. And I immediately changed that sentence and said, to me, Jackson Mthembu was a South African politician, yes, as they say. But to me, Jackson Mthembu was a revolutionary. Jackson Mthembu was a cadre, an activist, an operator, a trade unionist, a parliamentarian, a father, a grandfather, a communicator of note. I can attest to that. He served as a media officer for the South African Council of Churches. I was to experience his communication skills from around 1995 when he became the ANC national spokesperson. From then on, I experienced his communication, publicity, and in particular, his contributions to the media and communication policy of both the ANC and government through the ANC NEC subcommittee on communication. I was to experience his management of meetings, which also included highly qualified, experienced cadre in telecommunications, communications, and the management of internal and external conflicts within the African National Congress with regard to the sector that I'm referring to. I was to experience his resolute engagement with business giants in the sector, but he never lost sight of the interest of his organization, the African National Congress and its alliance. I was to experience his need for clarity of purpose at all times. He was a stickler for detail, accuracy, but most of all, every detail must be traced back to the ANC policies, conference resolutions, NEC, NWC, and officials' decisions. I was to experience his leadership, his commitment to during each and every national and local elections, where DIP was always at the forefront in developing the economics, the elections, media and communications campaign. I was to experience his steadfast and hand-steady directions of the planning and execution of the media and communications plan for each elections and each January 8th and each and every other grand plan for the ANC. I was to experience his steady mind, scrutinizing plans presented by each of the comrades that were tasked with developing communications plan, from Comrade Donovan to Comrade Donovan Klute, to Comrade Zizi Godwa, to Comrade Keith Koza, to Vuyiswa Manyandela, to Kusela Diko, to Nomfanelo Kota, who just spoke now, to Lumka Mtinde, and a whole lot of other comrades who we worked with. Stuck in my mind was his steady mind and hand in scrutinizing every piece of information, plans brought to team by any ad agency. I had to experience him with government communication, especially lately during this period of COVID-19, particularly communicating decisions of cabinet, decisions of the NCCC. I am happy today. It's painful for the family. It's painful for the African National Congress. We say to the family, thank you very much for borrowing us, Comrade Jackson. Thank you very much for all the work that he did. I am pained, yet I am at the same time celebrating, because I am committed to picking up the spear and making sure that the work that was done by Comrade Jackson Mthembu lives among us. And finally, that South Africa will be a better South Africa if we did and continue to do what Comrade Jackson did. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, comrade in the communication sector. It would not be befitting of celebrating the life of Comrade Jackson Mthembu without a revolutionary song here and there. So at this point in time, we'll have a song, and I'll hand over again to my co-program director, DSG Duarte. Thank you.
We all know that Comrade Jackson was also an underground operative of the African National Congress, one of the generation whose task it was to make the country ungovernable. And indeed, his diligence was unparalleled and he worked extremely hard. Our next speaker was part of the national leadership of the United Democratic Front in its national office and working with Comrade Jackson, who straddled the UDF in the Southern Transvaal as well as the Eastern Transvaal. It is my pleasure to welcome former NEC member and former minister, but very much an active ANC member, Comrade Vali Musa.
Sorry, you got me a little bit unawares, but just 1 second. I just want to call up my notes quickly, if I can find them. Can you hear me, Comrade Jesse?
We can hear you, Comrade Valley.
Oh, okay, thank you. The Secretary General of the ANC, the Deputy Secretary General, comrades, members of the family of the late Comrade Jackson Mthembu, and friends. This is indeed a very sad moment for us, but we need at the same time to use it to celebrate the life of a very dear comrade. And I want to touch on two experiences that I've had with Comrade Mthembu. The first is concerning the matter of the Political Party Funding Act, which you, Comrade DSG, are very familiar with. Early in 1997, I met with the then Secretary General in the DSG to discuss the need to implement one of the very neglected resolutions of the ANC conference. And this is the resolution which said that political parties and politicians should be transparent about who is funding them. We said that people of South Africa had a right to know whose money is behind political parties and politicians. There should be, in fact, certain rules that prohibits foreign governments from controlling parties in our parliament with the use of money. The then SG and DSG encouraged me to do whatever it takes to implement this resolution and take the matter forward. The Secretary General at the time asked the DSG to provide the support from the side of the headquarters. I then approached the Chief Whip at the time, Comrade Jackson Mthembu. He expressed tremendous relief when I told him started working on it a year earlier, but was just too busy to follow up. He said he felt guilty because, in his words, we are too busy with urgent matters, but have no time to do the really important things. He encouraged me to work on the matter, and he also said that to get this done would need concentrated effort from some of us. And then in his office, because I met him in his office, he took out the research work on party funding that he had already commissioned a year earlier. And he had even already got done a rough draft of the proposed bill. Comrade Jackson then drove this matter through Parliament and never wavered until it was done. Comrade Jesse, of course, gave tremendous support from the side of Luthuli House. And I'm saying all of this, Comrade Jesse, because it was a fitting tribute to Comrade Jackson Mthembu that the day after he passed away on Friday, in the Gazette, Government Gazette, this act was brought into operation. It is now on the statute books and it comes into operation from the 1st of April. And no longer will we have to wonder whose money is behind any political party or any political leader. So I was pleased with that. I was just a bit sore that it didn't happen, a week or two earlier, because he would have then known that the project was completed. In conclusion, I'd like to just say that Comrade Jackson was part of a generation of people in the 80s who displayed courage, bravery, and determination to fight apartheid that was just unthinkable in many ways, particularly for somebody like Comrade Jackson, who was located in Emalahleni and in the surrounding towns and villages of the Eastern Transvaal. It was not easy to operate there. It was a very dangerous place. But he was not alone. He was part of thousands of who had decided that detentions and arrest, petrol bombing of homes, torture, etc., were not going to stop this group of activists from bringing down the apartheid regime. But an important decision was taken by Comrade Jackson's generation, that we are going nowhere. that this is where we are fighting. There's no retreat to neighboring countries, to foreign countries. There's nowhere else. This is where we're in our last stand. And the revolutionary tactics that Comrade Nomvula and others refer to were being invented on the ground on a daily basis by people like Jackson Mthembu. These tactics were not from any scripture or any book anywhere else, nor were they copied from any other struggles that had taken place elsewhere. Because in fact, our mass struggle of the 1980s constituted the greatest mass uprising of modern times. There was no other example from which to learn from. And there was no other uprising of that scale and consistency since. It was unstoppable. If you think that in 1987, 40,000 of the leaders of the mass democratic movement were in detention or in prison, 40,000, but not even that was able to stop the uprising from continuing. So, Comrade Jackson Mthembu, we, the tens of thousands who fought side by side with you, say to you, rest in peace. You will forever remain in our hearts. Hamba Gatle Kawe Lama Kawe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Valley. Indeed, the slogan was, nothing can stop us now. Freedom or death, victory is certain. It is now my honor to go on to another area of Comrade Jackson's life, and that is the life of Comrade Jackson post the freedom and the achievement of a democratic state. Comrade Jackson was a member of he was a senator in the first Democratic Parliament. He also served as an MEC in Mpumalanga. As an NEC member, he was deployed in KwaZulu-Natal as a chief whip in Parliament, and he was an MP until his death as a member of the cabinet. I'd like to invite Dr. Matthew Sposa, who was the Mpumalanga Premier under whom Comrade Jackson served as an MEC, to speak to us about him. Dr. Posa?
Can you hear me, Comrade Jesse? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much, the officials and NEC members who are participating in this very important occasion. And thank you to you for chairing us so well. I was listening to the various speakers, and I want to say to the SG, really, we're doing the youth a disservice by not recording this heroic history of the United Democratic Front in books and proper articles. Maybe that will be one of the challenges we have, to begin to put together the history of the United Democratic Front properly. I'm aware, having been chair of UNISA for 15 years, we're keeping the BUSAC details about the United Democratic Front. It's a very proud history which must be recorded. Comrade Tembi, Vuyani, Kabo, Siabonga, Tuli, Banele, and Kolani. COVID is a sly thief which has stolen your father. But we want to assure you that he may have passed on, but true history never dies. As Marcelino dos Santos once said after the death of Machel, true history never dies. So the history of Comrade Jackson will never die. He has joined a pantheon of our heroes and heroines who have graced us on these shores. He is a national hero, of which we are very proud. When we were involved in many things, above board and underground, I had the pleasure of my law firm engaging him when he was in Comunicado for 90 days. But of course, fast forward, and I asked many comrades who worked with him to make their own point. And one comrade says, Comrade Posa, a page in Jackson's life is missing. The fact that he was trained by our unit in Mozambique after he was transferred to us is the ANC in Mozambique, from Zimbabwe to Mozambique. This was because his movement into Zimbabwe had been monitored, so he was given to our units in Mozambique. We made contact and he came to Mozambique for his crash course. We trained him, and later he sent Tom Nkosi and sent more comrades for military training and political training. That Comrade Teddy Coleman says is missing. But I've been tasked to talk about Comrade Jackson as an MEC. I've spoken a lot in the past few days about Jackson's various lives as he interacted with all of us. Many people don't realize that Comrade Jackson was part of the TEC, the Transitional Executive Committee. He liaised for the province with the late Comrade Joe Slovo, may his soul rest in peace, and our current President, Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa, for the province. And he was one of the first people to coordinate the formation of both the legislature in Mpumalanga and in terms of the cabinet, he was one of the people who was consulted. When we formed that cabinet, we consulted every structure of the ANC and every structure of the mass democratic movement. It was a culture which was there, which I regret is no longer there. And it was a culture we're proud of consulting one another. And the comrades, all of them agreed Comrade Jackson should be an MEC of Public Works. And I said in other interviews, he was a man not having too much time for theories. He was a practical man. And everybody knew Comrade Jackson, if you give him something to do, he will do it. And he has left important monument in Mpumalanga. You know, if you talk about the Maputo Corridor development, which we championed, he was the implementer. And he reported to me all the time about all the various projects which we had identified. And all of you remember the Maputo Corridor won the NEPAD prize as the best well-funded infrastructure project in Africa. Comrade Jackson was that implementer. If you go to Mpumalanga today, we talk about practical things. You will find a building called the Riverside Mall. We took a model we took in Canberra of integrated government building with parliament. And what Comrade Jackson did, he indigenized it. He formed a dome, an African dome, and that African dome is today the parliament, but it's one chain of a building where everything takes place. Not many people at that time would have thought about that, but that is a legacy, a Mthembu legacy he left for us, and we're proud of what he left for us there. Not 1 cent was stolen when a lot of money there, it was almost $1 billion was moving around. Not 1 cent was stolen. And I say that with pride. Not 1 cent was stolen when Jackson was an MEC in his department. I can't remember one time as a premier was called upon to extinguish the fires of corruption in that department. It was being run by a man of honor, a man of dignity. Comrade Jackson never lost touch with the masses in Mpumalanga. We always had a joke in Mpumalanga, and I'll share it here because we were celebrating his life. Comrade Jackson, for a long time, I don't know whether by the time of his death, he had a driver's license. I don't know, but when he started, he didn't have. But he started a driving school. He built a driving school in Kutlu for the whole province to ensure that anybody who drives a car has a license, when he himself didn't even have it at that time. He never abused position to build a road for himself in the township. Most of the roads were paved except his until his death. You remember the people who were making roads for themselves to their homes and to their cross. Comrade Jackson was never tempted to do all those things. Each time residents raised the issue of the roads, Comrade Jackson would insist they speak to the councillors because he believed that the lower level of government needs to be accountable to the masses as well. He pushed many councillors and gave them headaches all the time. So Comrade Jackson will be missed, not only by you, Comrade Tembi and the children, he'll be missed by the nation. As I say, he is one of our heroes who has last week joined the pantheon of all our heroes and heroines. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Matthews, for putting into context the work that Comrade Jackson did in Mpumalanga, which was very important work and was the corridor itself is still running, it's still up and running, and it still does good work. I'd like now to call Comrade Sihle Zikalala, the chairperson of the ANC, as well as the premier of the KwaZulu-Natal province, to make a few remarks.
program directors, the national officials of the ANC, the family of Comrade Jackson Mthembu, comrades and compatriots. The life of Comrade Jackson Mthembu, Velase, Jackson, epitomize the day-to-day struggle of the people of our land. As said, Comrade Jackson was the product of the struggle of the suffering masses and the downtrodden of our land. In him, we had a seasoned, humble, and a dedicated cadre of the movement. We were honored in KwaZulu-Natal to have worked with him for more than a decade. I and a number of ANC leaders, as well as activists from the province, can affirm that Comrade Mvelase was a workaholic who enjoyed working on the ground, servicing the people. At the ANC level, Comrade Mthembu was deployed in KwaZulu-Natal and assigned to Moses Mabhida level, where he led many campaigns with great passion and enthusiasm. We can also attest that Comrade Mvelase was dedicated in servicing structures of the movement. In doing so, he will emphasize unity and solving problems of the movement in a way that is consistent with the principles of the organization. Wherever there were campaigns, Comrade Jackson will be there. Just last year in October, we saw him crisscrossing Umtubatuba in the northern Natal, in Umkanyagude, with our activists during the local government by-elections campaign. At a government level, when our democratic state launched the district development model, Comrade Jackson was assigned by the president and the national cabinet to work in Herigwala district, where he worked with MEC Shlomuka, who is a champion of the provincial government to that district. Together with Comrade Zamo Ngumalo, the district mayor, they worked diligently and collectively. We thank them for managing to launch the district development model, which became one of the first functional DDMs in our province. Comrade Mthembu surrendered himself completely to the struggle of the people and the working class. In him, we had an exemplary revolutionary cadre who had internalized both the values and the traditions of our movement. He understood that the ANC was in power to advance the national democratic revolution and to deliver the national democratic society that is truly non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, united, and prosperous. He embodied the best values of the NDR, as the strategy and tactics will put it and say, as I quote, the NDR seek to build a society based on the best values in human civilizations in terms of political and human freedom, socio-economic right, value system, and identity. If there were to be a single measure of the civilization mission of the National Democratic Revolution, it would be how it treats the most vulnerable in the society, close quote. In his life, Comrade Jackson was preoccupied with effectiveness of the ANC in discharging this historical mission and responsibility of improving the life of our people, especially the vulnerable, poor, marginalized rural women and disabled. With his natural, humble character, he lived among the downtrodden and the suffering masses and always strove to ensure that the movement and our government respond effectively to their plight. By embodying humility throughout, he endeavored himself in the hearts of our people and distinguished himself from those who, when they are deployed to higher positions, become arrogant, aloof, and pursue a high life of conspicuous consumption, materialism, and disregard others, especially the ordinary people. Mvelase would engage with anyone and all people, irrespective of their social standing or economic position, as dictated by principles of constructive criticism and self-criticism. Comrade Mvelase will always engage openly and frankly on his views. He would advance his positions and views with passion and great agility, but never for once seek to belittle or humiliate others, no matter how he would disagree with them. He differed with many comrades, but he would calmly engage them in one-on-one discussions to iron out differences in a matured way, in line with the principle of constructive engagement in the movement. In his honor, we must continue with the work of renewal and unity of the ANC. We must return to our best traditions of revolutionary discipline, collective decision-making, and democratic centralism. We must pay greater attention to the plight of our people and always treat them with respect and dignity. We must hasten to improve the capacity and effectiveness of our developmental state so that it can best tackle the root causes of the scourge of unemployment, inequality, and poverty. As said, there are those who struggle for a month, that is good. There are those who struggle for years, that is also appreciated. But there are those who struggle for their entire lives. Those, they have their life intertwined with the struggle and the plight of the masses. Such was Jackson Mthembu. And we say, farewell, hamba kahle, Comrade Mvelase, ushiye ngokukhulu ukuzuma. Thank you, Comrade Program Directors.
Thank you very much, Comrade Sitle. The nurse who looked after Comrade Jackson at the Mill Park Hospital said something which will remain with many of us for a long time to come. She said, we were not nursing a do you know who I am patient. They were nursing Baba Mthembu. And I think Comrade Sitles reminded us of the need for humility and the need to strengthen resolve for making sure that the goals of the ANC is our real task and our real focus. Comrades, and friends, I would now like to invite the ANC's Deputy Chief Whip, Comrade Doris Dlakude, to make a few remarks.
Thank you, Program Director, the DSG, Program Directors, the ANC officials, my leaders, the NSC members, comrades and friends. I greet you all in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Program Directors, as the ANC Parliamentary Caucus in the 6th term of Parliament, Comrade Jackson Mthembu is the 10th member of our caucus to pass on. This is the most traumatic and extremely emotionally draining for us, as we are losing one colleague after the other on a daily basis. Hence, our chief whip couldn't be part of this memorial service because she's extremely emotional at this time. His untimely passing has devastated us as the ANC Parliamentary Caucus, because this COVID-19 has robbed us of such a dynamic leader of our people who dedicated every inch of his being to strengthening our democracy. As the chief whip in the ANC Parliamentary Caucus, Comrade Mthembu excelled in his duties. He would delegate responsibilities to all of us, to me as the Deputy Chief Whip, and also other comrades who were leading or heading subcommittees of the ANC Parliamentary Caucus. Without him micromanaging us, he would allow us and give us space to do our job, to make mistakes and learn from them. He was very supportive, both professionally and personally. He would call you to check how are you faring, during the difficult times that you might be going through in your life. He was one person or leader to whom you can rely on. And whenever you tell him your personal stories, you will never hear them from anyone else. He would kept it to himself. Comrade Jackson, when becoming a minister, he was not pompous. He was not one of those. He was one of those comrades who knew that he was deployed by the ANC to do the work. Comrade Jackson didn't forget that there was a chief, there is a chief whip's office in Parliament. He continued to respect the office and worked well with us as the office of the chief whip. Whenever we call him for a debate or anything that we might have needed advice on, Comrade Mthembu was always available to assist us and also was available to take the responsibility that we were asking him to take as the office of the chief whip. In my personal capacity, Comrade Jackson Mthembu allowed me to do my work. He never, not even once, undermined me as a woman. Comrade Mthembu was very supportive. He was like a brother to me and also a mentor. Comrade Mthembu, even when he was a minister, he would call to check whenever he heard that I'm not well or I'm going through a rough patch in my life. Comrade Mthembu would be the first person to call. So in his honor, we promise to continue to fight all forms of corruption and strengthen our resolve to build a better country for all our people as we nest back our nation to economic recovery. We have lost a leader in his own who was very vocal, a leader who was fearless, a leader who knew that being a leader doesn't mean that you should disrespect other people. Given the history, his history in the struggle, Comrade Jackson, we all understand that he was doing what he loved the most, to serve the people of this country, to remain true to the principles of our organization, and also to assist in building not only our country, but in assisting to build other leaders, young people to become leaders. We have lost a true son of the soil. How we wish Comrade Jackson could multiply, and how we wish some of us could continue where he left off and emulate his character and his jovial mood as we serve our people. Comrade Jackson died in the fourth while he was doing his work as the minister in the presidency. We saw him in the forefront of this fighting this pandemic. He made sure that he made sure that the nation is well informed on how to deal and also to protect themselves from this deadly pandemic. We therefore echo the call by our president for all our community members, all the South African citizens to adhere to the health protocols of wearing their masks, social distancing, and also making sure that they sanitize at all times. It is very heartbreaking to see people who are very ignorant of the fact that the COVID-19 is very dangerous and vicious. We salute Comrade Mthembu, who died with his boots on in trying to make sure that the South African nation is well informed of the dangers of this deadly pandemic. We therefore call upon all faith-based organizations to pray for our leaders, to pray for our president and our country, to pray for our president, our nation, and the country as a whole, to be protected from this deadly pandemic. Program directors, thank you very much.
It doesn't matter who you are or where you are, you need to wear your mask. We as the ANC must lead by example. There is no other way to lead except by example. I'd like now to call on Comrade Baleka Mbete, the former Speaker of the National Assembly, to make a few remarks. Comrade Baleka.
Thank you very much, Comrade Chair. I'd like to greet the family members, ikakhulu unkosikazi kaComrade Jackson, uMama Mthembu, nabantwana. I would like to also greet all comrades who are here and the leadership, in particular the Secretary General and the Deputy Secretary General, and all comrades and South Africans who are part of this platform. In order to try, Comrade Chair, to keep strictly within the time limits, I decided to write down, the 2-page matters that I have to say as part of my also pouring out of grief. It is when I heard that you drove daily between Joburg and Witbank that I knew there was something special about you. Then one day you talked about your mother, how important and reassuring it was to her that you always came home. Not only was it impressive that you took to heart what your mother felt, but the fact that you actually shared openly about it indicated that with you, some everyday assumptions don't apply. I watched with deep sadness your beautiful send-off from the first to the last minute when your family were peeled away from your resting place. Tuli's gentle tribute was revealing about the kind of father you were. We shared notes of the other difficult and painful parts of being very busy parents, the realities of juggling our schedules and our family responsibilities, especially in cases when there's a child who has special demands and needs. Humankind is yet to hone the skills necessary to handle such situations beyond what currently exists. One wonders how they handled these matters in the ancient times. I wonder if a capitalist society can ever respond adequately. There was a time when communities understood the meaning of the saying, "Every child is my child." My brother, your last moments were well captured with admirable choice of words, without extravagance, but giving the whole nation a good sense of how, with characteristic efficiency, you dealt with that morning. The discomfort and temperature, thinking how your great love is, concern about your friend and boss, but calmness and acceptance that the time had arrived for you to move on to the next phase of life. Yes, I do believe it's not the end of your life just because you left this earth. We will continue to feel your absence. We feel a large void we have no words to convey or explain. This emptiness in each of us, but also an inexplicable hole in the collective psyche of a people on behalf of whom you were in the forefront, regularly marshalling the forces and the words to address a people in ongoing anguish, tormented by this invisible enemy that also took you away. A very costly way to illustrate what a well-organized funeral looks like, we must admit. Also the most convincing proof of what a worthy person you were, contrary to many everyday assumptions. Since you signaled to the hospital team around you as you took a dignified exit from here, an avalanche of truths have come before our people. As it turns out, you were a hard worker, a reliable communicator, a considerate ally and interlocutor between the ANC government, the communications sector, and the people. You were a down-to-earth person of the people, whom you lived with and among to the end. Our stint at the peak of our legislative sector responsibility was well summarized by Comrade Thandi, still soldiering on through the COVID troubled times, as defeat is not an option. You were a true ANC cadre wherever you were sent to play one or other role. The National Executive Committee sent us out in 2010 to formulate and lead the implementation of the program to mark the centenary of the ANC. Paying attention to detail as we crisscrossed the length and breadth of South Africa, you proved to be the best supervisor of how we reconnected with our people in the over 50 communities in the ANC regions around South Africa. In the legislative sector, you served at the provincial level, you served in the Senate, but you got better known as Chief Whip in the National Assembly. I have no doubt that future generations of freedom-loving South Africans will continue to improve our institutions of our constitutional dispensation. We must ensure they dig out and bring back the constitutional principles with which Oliver Reginald Tambo had armed us. We must check our actions and interpretations and implementation of the Constitution against each and every one of those constitutional principles. Comrade Jackson Mthembu, mfowethu, hamba kahle mvelasi, siyabonga. Thank you, Comrade Chair.
Just have a song now. Thank you very much. What a legacy left for us and for future generations, for inspiration, for encouragement, and to ensure that indeed at some stage, at some time in the future, we can say it is now Uhuru, because as yet it is not. And formidable leaders like Comrade Jackson Mthembu are needed in today's time to focus on empowering our people to liberate themselves and to liberate our country, as well as our continent. This is the African century. This is the time for the African Renaissance. And indeed, it is a time that requires leaders of fortitude, leaders that are able to unite, and leaders that are of a high ethical standing. At this point in time, we are well within the time frames that we have set. It is a time to focus on the message from the family. I want to thank Sis Thembi and the children and the Mthembu family for having borrowed us their finest to advance the struggle for liberation and the reconstruction of our country in this democracy. I will now ask Mandla Mthembu to take the floor, or is it to take the screen and to share his tributes and the reflections of the family.
Thank you, Comrade Gwen. Comrade Jackson dedicated all his life to his beloved movement, that is the African National Congress. As the Mthembu family, we like to thank the ANC for giving Comrade Jackson Mthembu a platform to showcase his ability as a leader in the government and in ANC. Comrade Jackson Mthembu was a good communicator, a selfless leader, a people's rep. The lion of the East has fallen. Comrade Jackson Mthembu bekathanda nakafika ebusuku ayikhoti athi baba umbutho uyasetshenzela sisebenza kanzima sisebenzela ukuthi uANC wethu ubonakale umuhle ebantwini bakithi kusasa abantu babe namanzi babe nogezi babe nezindlela ezintsha hayi ukuthi sitshontshe imali yombutho because nasizabalaza azange sizabalazele ukuthi sizotshontshela umbutho wakithi. Yiko Comrade Jackson bekahlala sitshela kona athi baba even those people abaku-tenders nabajona inhlangano abajoinela inhlangano ukuthi babuye babenefit ku-ANC yethu. Abantu nabafuna ama-tender they must go kuma-platform right bathola ama-tender. And I would like to say thank you ANC, thank you government, thank you South Africa. We must wear our mask. COVID-19 iyabulala corona icon. Comrade Jackson on Tuesday before Zoshona, I called him, it was around 9-10 ebusuku. I'm from Egonjan Bab, I think corner Bab, right, nothing right. What uhambile wawutesta ngathi yes ngitestile ama results ngathi no ama results ngiwatholile. Comrade Jackson beka umuntu uphila nabantu. That is why bekahlala elokishini ahlale nabantu encourage abantu emadoda asifuna imisebenzi emadoda asihambe esikoleni njengoba hlala encourage si family. But we like to say thank you ANC, thank you South Africa. Siyabonga.
Very much.
Thank you very much, Mandla. One thing I need to say is when you go to Comrade Jackson's house at Emalahleni, you know it's an ANC house. There's no doubt. The front door is not far from the road. It is a sign that people are welcome. People live there and the neighbors know each other and the street is vibrant and busy. And you step into that warm house and it is an ANC home with members of the ANC living there, including Comrade Jackson's widow, whom we all will support and love, and his 4 children and grandchildren. Like to move on now, and we are going to have brief messages from the leagues of the ANC. The ANC youth, the NYTT, will be represented by Comrade Precious Banda, 3 minutes. The ANC Women's League President, Comrade Batabile Dlamini, will speak. Comrade Nora Fakude will also speak on behalf of the Veterans League. In that order, please, comrades. So we will begin with Comrade Precious. Please, Comrade Precious, you may take the floor.
And program directors, to the Mthembu family, and all leaders of the ANC on various levels, the alliance, the leagues, and all protocol observed. I would like to start by thanking the Mthembu family for sharing this doyen of our struggle with us and for allowing him to be part of the struggles that he fought for our people. We are here, Comrade Jackson, as the NYTT to invoke your spirit. You are the one who started this activism as a young person. You refused to let injustice and indignation to reign. You took the side of your people without any guarantee for that tomorrow will be better. We exhort Comrade Jackson, the student activist, the one who put his body on the line for the transformation of education. They know you at Fort Hare, Comrade Jackson. It is said that you pass on when higher education is not fully transformed. You pass on when the poorest of the poor are still waiting for laptops since last year when virtual learning and teaching began. Go tell Comrade Wavelile and President Sandrabaloe that the poorest of the poor have no gadgets and no connectivity in their villages. They are being left behind. You pass on when thousands of students will not access higher education because they cannot afford. These painful realities will unfold while the ANC of Comrade Joslovo and Comrade Jackson Mthembu will continue to say they have delivered free education. Comrade Jackson, you knew that as you were in the front line of COVID-19, many more pandemics are killing the people silently. Let us not forget about tuberculosis, HIV/AIDS, poverty, violence against women and children. We must give all of them adequate attention for the sake of the survival of our people. Comrade Jackson, as an upright man, it would be an injustice not to uncover the real corruption behind the PPE and all service delivery cases. The people deserve the truth, and Comrade Jackson, we know you agree with us. Go tell Mama Winnie and Mama Charlotte Makreke in this year of Charlotte Makreke that women continue to live in fear because of men. We live in fear because there's no apartheid police that is chasing us. There are no warrant of arrest that are chasing us, but only because men of this country are killing us. They kill women, children, disabled, and the LGBTQI+ community. Comrade Jackson, there is a mayor in the Northwest who's raping young women, and nothing is being done by your movement. There is also a perpetrator in the Eastern Cape who does not want to leave structures of the ANC, despite the serious allegations of violence against women against him. Tell Mama Winnie and Mama Makreke that it's not easy, but we are fighting on. Go and tell President Peter Mukaba that the Congress Youth League, which you both loved, is paralyzed by elders. Tell the Lion of the North that for young people to now lead, they must be in the hands of elders. Comrade Jackson, you know how only those with money and a blessing from the powers that be will lead the ANC Youth League. You knew that the ANC Youth League must leave one day, true to its historic mandate, but you left us before it happened. Please
Comrade Precious, can you please begin to wind down?
As I conclude, Program Director, please tell President Peter Mukaba that we are refusing to be ICE boys and ICE girls of senior comrades who are hell-bent to capture the ANC Youth League. We refuse to be proxies in battles of old people who infiltrate us and divide us to reduce our fighting capacity. We refuse to be funded by senior comrades who want to own us and to own our agency. We are weak today as young people, but please tell President Peter Mukaba, no matter how long it takes, we will free the ANC Youth League from funded views and factionalism of elders.
Thank you very much, Comrade Precious. Thank you very much for that message. I now call upon the President of the ANC Women's League, Comrade Batabile Dlamini, to please render her message.
Directors of the program, Comrade TSG, Jesse Duarte, and Comrade Gwenda Makupa, the leadership of the ANC, and Comrade SG, TG, the national chairperson, the leagues, the leadership of the Alliance in Sanko, as well as MDM structures. The ANC Women's League would like to pass its deepest condolences to the family of Comrade Jackson Mthembu, more particularly his wife, Umama Utembi, his children and family members. And we are proud to say Comrade Jackson loved his family. And he also shared some of the challenges that were facing children with some of us without a fear. Comrade Jackson leaves us during a very critical and difficult time, when there is turmoil in the whole world and in the country, when we are all trying to fight and trying to understand the faceless enemy, and we do not know and understand its lifespan. Comrade Jackson epitomized love through his laughter that was real, very loud, and came from the stomach. He epitomized humility, bravery, and selflessness. He stood for what he believed in and supported what he believed in. He would fiercely and fearlessly raise his ideas in meetings. And he understood and believed in the battle of ideas. And that shows that he deeply understood communication. He was also very persuasive, and sometimes you would agree and agree to disagree. And we would see some or semblance of understanding of humanity after meetings of the NEC that were sometimes very robust. And thereafter, you would see him coming to relate with you and share jokes. And he did not harbor hatred and antagonism. And that is what we expect from all comrades, the culture of Ubuntu. Comrade Jackson's leadership qualities display how the ANC, the trade union movement, MDM structures have invested to many other comrades that continue to fight for the full transformation of the country. He never excluded himself from the masses of the country because he understood the struggle of the people of South Africa, and he understood where we are in terms of the struggle. He leaves us with the memory of a cadre that displayed expertise and dynamism in communications. Towards the end of his life, he marshaled government forces, and in a very special way, he was able to help a government to pass sad, bad, painful messages and news to the nation. And he tried to unite the nation to fight COVID as a nation in a very calm, with a sense of urgency and with concern, and made everyone in government account, but did also not put pressure on comrades. And that was Comrade Jackson, who at all times tried to ensure that the narrative that was carried to the nation was about, during the first wave, flattening the curve, social distance, washing your hands, using a sanitizer, and using the mask. And that was very special. And it was after he passed on, when we all took a few steps back to look into his commitment to the fight and a relentless fight for social justice and human rights. May his soul rest in peace. We will always remember Comrade Jackson. Thank you very much, Program Director.
I would now like to call on Comrade Nora Fakude on behalf of the Veterans League to give a brief message.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Thank you for the opportunity that is given to me, and especially the Veterans League. It is just yesterday when we laid in your final rest place, Mvelase, and yet it feels like a dream, even as if it is with most of us who watched your funeral service on TV. We still can't believe that you are gone. The pain was even deeper as we could not accompany you to your final resting place due to the COVID-19 regulations. In spirit, though, we were there right to the end. I keep on looking at the door, hoping that you would walk into my office and ask me as usual, "What's up, Mom?" And yeah, with that big smile on your face and that loud, infectious laugh that made me want to just laugh along with you. Comrade Jackson, a lot has been said about you, and none of it is false. You were indeed a people's person right up to the end. Through all the years I have known you and got to work with you, I have known you to be strong, resolute, and hardworking. You were our first MEC for Public Roads, Works, Roads and Transport. And I never knew what an appointment meant. And when I needed issues, I walked into that office just as you worked and walked into my office. Nothing could further you from the truth, even if the odds were stacked against you. I am reminded of one of the most difficult times when you were summoned to appear before the National Disciplinary Committee of the ANC, chaired by the late Comrade Kada Asman, with the charges that were drummed up, as none of them were proven to be true. When you won that case, we didn't even pay the lawyer. We still owe him 3,000 rand because we got what we wanted, and what we wanted was what was real. Many of your colleagues at the time dissociated themselves from you. Like a true soldier, you went on to face your battle alone, and you won while wearing your infectious laugh as if it was not painful. Not once after everything did you consider turning your back against the ANC or the very same comrades who wanted to see you gone from an organization that you loved, an organization that you gave your life to fight for and defend. I could see through your eyes that you were hurting, and you presented this brave face that you always displayed in public. Not a word of complaint, neither a sign of resentment. You endured it all, Jackson. Your words for me were, "Mom, this is not about me. It is about our people. They need us to work for them. I am not going to fight for the truth." Indeed, he didn't fight for the truth. He fought for who people didn't want him to stand for. True to your words, you gave your life to be the servant of the people, while many went out to craft new paths for themselves and even made more money than you. But you, Jackson, continued to be a servant of the people, despite all the opportunities you had access to that could have made you more money. You chose the people. You chose us. Every person you met had a story about how funny, helpful, and loyal you are. And I can attest to that. You had this amazing gift of making everyone you meet comfortable around you. Comrade Jackson, how proud I am of how you lived your life. You chose to live it with laughter, love, and hard work. You chose to share your light to everyone who was open and willing to enjoy the simple things in life with you. Laughter, it doesn't cost anything. Anyone can laugh for as long as they can open to it. This is you, what you gave freely and openly to everyone willing to be your friend, and how you loved unconditionally your people, your comrades, family, and friends. There are so many things I wanted to say, but it couldn't be because it was still trying to understand. I was still trying to understand what just happened to you. I just
Thank you, Mama. Please summarize. Thank you, Mama.
Thank you. But
Thank you.
above all, I just want to leave a quote of Leo Buscaris, who said, I quote, I know for certain that we never lose the people we love even today. They continue to participate in every act, not a decision we make. Their love leaves an indelible imprint in our memories. Close quote. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was a tribute from the leagues, the youth, the Women's League, and the Veterans League. Before I call my last item, I want to indeed say I've been privileged to have been asked to co-program direct this solemn service and a celebration of the life of Comrade Jackson Mthembu. I would actually quote the erstwhile president of Mozambique, Comrade Samora Machel, when he said, personalities and fame pass, the revolution must remain. The revolution of Jackson Mthembu remains with us. Let us pick up the spear and fight on. There are two things that he discussed with me and those that he worked with in the office, even during his isolation time before he was hospitalized of COVID-19. The first was the importance of the rollout of the vaccine against COVID-19. He called us, he wanted plans. He wanted a very tight plan for monitoring for impact, as he always said, that the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation must monitor for impact on the lives of ordinary South Africans. Not only impact against COVID, but also impact on the economic reconstruction and recovery. And it is in his honor that before he was buried, an IMC on COVID-19 vaccine rollout was established. And we want to thank President Cyril Ramaphosa and also Deputy President who's chairing it, that we will honor his memory. And he actually wanted to call on all of us, those in government and those out of government, not to repeat the shame of yesterday, of corruption, of fraud, of for the resources made available to help our people and to relieve them of the plight that they are facing. I want to take this opportunity, therefore, to call on COSATU and the South African Communist Party to present their tributes before the eulogy, the final eulogy for the day. For COSATU, Comrade Mike Shingange, First Deputy President, and for the South African Communist Party, Comrade Thulas Nxesi, who also survived COVID. He's a survivor of COVID. Comrades, please come one after the other. I plead that you write your full tributes. And for now, please take 5 minutes each. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Program Director, Comrade Gwen, and together with the DSG. And let me, through the officials, greet all the NEC members of the ANC present here and the members of the Communist Party as led by Comrade Tulas. Sincere greetings to the family of Mthembu. Thank you, the African National Congress, for affording us an opportunity to be part of the celebration of this giant of our movement, and also having an opportunity to, as I do, on behalf of my president, Comrade Singisalosi, and the members of the Federation at large, convey our sincere condolences to the family, to the government of South Africa, and to the African National Congress at large. It is not an exaggeration, Comrade Program Director, to say that Comrade Jackson died with his boots on, died in the battlefield, and succumbed to the enemy of the humankind. When they call for citizens of this country to take up arms and confront the struggle against colonialism and apartheid and the struggle to liberate this country, Comrade Jackson put on his boots, found an available weapon next to him, and joined and continued the struggle of his forebears to defeat apartheid, to defeat colonialism, and finally to transcend into a democratic dispensation. At no point do we remember Comrade Jackson having taken off his boots. At no point do we remember him having taken a leave from the quest to totally liberate and transform society and liberate the people of South Africa. We remember him for that. He continued when he picked up that spear or the arms that were near him as a young person, as a student, for which he was dismissed from some of institutions of learning, including when he was an adult, when he united the people of South Africa as a whole, when he united the working class, when he united the workers by joining, formulating, and working within the trade union movement, conscientizing the trade union movement and teaching them as one of the training officer that to combine a workplace struggle, to combine the community struggle is actually part of the struggle of the working class, and it is very important. He taught us that the situation which workers find themselves in, the condition under which they work and live, the condition under which the community and students find themselves in, is the decisions of politicians, and it is a political decision by the lawmakers. And therefore, you cannot separate the struggle, political struggle, and the struggle of any sphere of society. We remember him for that, his role in forming the National Union of Mine Workers, forming his predecessor or its predecessor, the Metal and Allied Workers Union. And I'm sure, Comrade, the Program Director, you will know the vibrancy of that union embodies the vibrancy of Comrade Jackson Mthembu. To date, when this country is faced with the war against COVID-19, again, as an adult, as a minister, I was at the forefront, not just as a soldier, but as a commander of all the soldiers that are supposed to fight this COVID-19, leading by example and leading at the forefront, and as we say, died in the hands of this enemy. We know him as the only person in public that we know to have acknowledged, thanked, and appreciated the role that is played by the healthcare workers under difficult conditions they work, underfunded, understaffed, and indeed under-remunerated. He's the only one person in his last days that we know to have publicly acknowledged their role. And I don't want to say it is because he was married to health workers, because of course, he's not the only person to have married a nurse. We know that in recent times, as a comrade have just said now, the interministerial task team on the vaccines, he was at the forefront on making sure that South Africans must be educated properly and the proper structures must be put in place and system must be put in place to make sure that South Africans are vaccinated. And I want to echo, as Kosato, our motivation to South Africans to take up this campaign on the ground, but also to make themselves available for the vaccination. It's the only scientific way we know that can get us out to a immunity that we may be able to return to normality. Last few things we remember Comrade Jackson of. We remember him for being with us in the struggle against corruption and state capture, when few had the courage to speak out inside our movement. We remember him for being with us in the many battles as a federation, particularly in the PIC Amendment Bill, when it was facing a very fierce opposition from those who were enjoying and continue to enjoy the feasting on the workers' money. It is one minister that stood with us, firstly as a chief whip, and also later as a minister in the presidency. Recently, the workers in this country have been faced an onslaught on collective bargaining. When this matter was escalated to the presidency, on numerous occasions we went to a union building, we encountered him, he understood that the worker struggles as they were important in those years when he was a member of the union himself are as important today as he is now a minister. He never said, as one of the leaders of the liberation movement, I have arrived and therefore I have no time to listen to the workers. And that is why he made a call to the president to make himself available to meet the trade union movement, to listen to the cries of the workers, because he understands that the conditions of workers has not as such changed. The aspirations of workers have not such changed. And in fact, the rights of workers can be undermined today by a liberation movement, and more importantly, by a democratic state that is supposed to be accredited for fighting for the workers' right. We remember him for such, and indeed, he died with his boots on, and we shall carry on his struggles. And that's why we say, much as we say he must rest in peace, but we say may his spirit live on, as workers will emulate him and will remember him as the beacon. He's one of the people, as I conclude, Chair, that when hope seems to disappear, when despair seems to engulf us, when we think we want to give up, his conduct, his behavior for the unity of our movement and the allies in particular, and the exemplary manner in which he led through and through as a government minister, keep saying that perhaps it's not time for us to give up. We must continue to fight so that we have got many Jackson Mthembus in this country, so that the transformation agenda started by our forefathers can indeed continue. May his soul rest in peace. Thank you to the family for having borrowed this nation. You're one of your own, a giant ever walked this way. Thank you very much, Comrade Chair.
Thank you, Program Director, the ANC leadership and its allies, and all leaders and members of the different sectors in this platform. The South African Communist Party conveys its heartfelt condolences to the family of Comrade Jackson Mthembu. It is with heavy hearts that we gather here to say farewell to our comrade and leader, Comrade Jackson Mthembu. Our thoughts are with his family and friends at this difficult time. We also send sincere condolences to the ANC, his organization, for their great loss. You also built a great rapport with the media practitioners, to whom we also express our condolences. I realize, Chair, that nothing we say can take away from the pain that death brings in its wake. But we can also offer the perspective that a life well lived is never a waste. At such times, I find comfort in quoting from the German communist poet, Bertolt Brecht, who wrote as follows, I quote, "Do not fear death so much, but rather fear the inadequate life," unquote. There was nothing inadequate about the life of Comrade Jackson. His was a life of struggle against the oppressive apartheid regime as part of the community, education, labor, and political structures. With the advent of democracy, Comrade Jackson threw himself into the task of rebuilding and of building non-racial and non-sexist democracy. Comrade Jackson was a revolutionary worker and a shop steward of the Metal and Allied Workers Union, MAU, one of the unions that merged in 1987 to form the National Union of the Metal Workers of South Africa under the leadership of the Congress of South African Trade Unions. Comrade Jackson understood the pain of exploitation and mobilized in the struggle against it, just as he did against apartheid system. He understood the link between oppression and exploitation as well as gender domination. He understood the implications of corruption in government, which is stealing from the poor, which he said it's a matter we have to decisively deal with. He was a master of the art of bringing people together, forging the kind of unity that is required to move South Africa forward. He will be greatly missed for that unity. The unity of pulling, nationalist pulling, the communist pulling everyone together into the movement. The manner of his untimely death is a reminder to each of us of the serious challenge that we face and the need to exercise iron discipline in the face of the COVID-19 onslaught. May he rest in peace. Long live the spirit of Comrade Jackson Mthembu. I thank you.
And Comrade Tulas for giving us messages that we can carry away with us. It might be important to say that perhaps Comrade Jackson Mthembu has not died, he will multiply. And that is an important way of looking at it. It is now an honor for me to call Comrade Paul Mashatile, the Treasurer General of the ANC, to deliver to us tonight the eulogy. He has known Comrade Jackson for over 40 years. It's more than 2 lifetimes of knowing somebody. And I think that we can all look forward to what he is going to say. Thank you very much, Comrade Paul. You may take the podium.
Thank you very much, program directors. Sis Thembi, the wife of Comrade Jackson, the children and the grandchild, the entire Mthembu family, relative, friends, and the loved ones. Comrade President Cyril Ramaphosa, Comrade Deputy President David Mabuza, National Chairperson Comrade Gwede Mantashe, Secretary General Comrade Ace Magashule, Deputy Secretary General Comrade Jesse Duarte, members of the National Executive Committee of the ANC, leadership of the ANC Women's League, the Youth League, the Veterans League, leadership of COSAS, SASCO, YCL, and PYA, ministers and deputy ministers, members of parliament, premiers, MECs, and members of provincial legislatures, executive mayors, religious leaders, business leaders, representatives of civil society organizations, members of the media, comrades and compatriots, the leadership of the Alliance, fellow South Africans. I wish to also acknowledge all the speakers that spoke before me, paying tribute to our beloved Comrade Jackson Mthembu. On behalf of the African National Congress, its leadership and entire membership, I wish to take this opportunity once again to send our deepest condolences to Sis Thembi, the wife of Comrade Jackson, the children and the grandchild, the entire Mthembu family, relatives, friends, and loved ones. Bonke abagwamvelas. To you we say, agwehlanga lungehlanga. We wish you strength and fortitude during this difficult period. We know it is not easy to come to terms with the loss of the loved one. However, we hope our words of comfort during this memorial service will plaster your gaping wounds and comfort you in the knowledge that Comrade Jackson touched many lives in a positive way. He inspired many. He provided wise and valuable counsel to many. He comforted many. He lifted many as he was rising. He illuminated the path for many. He was indeed an exemplary life worthy of emulation. He was truly inspirational. His was a truly inspirational journey. Accordingly, we too share in the deep pain that has engulfed his family. Your loss as a family is our loss too. We are proud to claim Comrade Jackson as one of our own. Indeed, in the African National Congress, we take pride in the fact that we can count patriots of the caliber of Comrade Jackson Mthembu as part of our movement. Such patriots give us the assurance that we stand on the shoulders of morally upright men and women of courage and principle, that ours is a just and noble cause, and that our movement, the African National Congress, is without doubt a glorious movement. We will always remember Comrade Jackson as a kind, humble, and gracious leader who always put others before himself. We will also remember him as a lifelong foot soldier for the freedom of the people of South Africa. We will never forget his passion for the cause of building a better life for all. We will remember him as a highly competent servant of the people. Velase loved his country, his movement, the African National Congress, and the people of our country. He was faithful and loyal to the end. He drew respect and admiration from across political divide. With great courage, calm, and humility, he never hesitated to speak up. Speak up firmly for what he believed in. He always stood on the side of the truth. He spoke and acted honestly and truthfully. He was reliable. He was dependable. He was hardworking. To us, he will remain a national hero, a patriot, and one of the foremost servant leaders of the people of South Africa. He leaves behind a proud, towering legacy. History will record that from the dusty streets of Witbank, eMalahleni, rose a young and determined activist who refused to accept anything less than what every South African deserves: a decent life, freedom, democracy, and equality. Future generations will learn of Comrade Jackson, who was among those who heeded the call of the liberation movement under the leadership of the ANC to swell the ranks of grassroots formations in the fight against apartheid tyranny. Being the well-rounded cadre that he was, Comrade Jackson was part of the students, youth, labor, and civic movement. It was owing to his militancy that Mthembu, as he was fondly known to us, was expelled at the University of Fort Hare, thus not being able to complete his tertiary education at that institution. His political acumen, bravery, and commitment to the cause of liberation propelled him to the leadership of the United Democratic Front as its Assistant Regional Secretary of the Southern Transvaal, which today is known as Gauteng. At that time, I was the Regional Secretary of the UDF's Southern Transvaal, and we worked in the same office. I worked very closely with Comrade Jackson as my assistant under the capable leadership of Mama Albertina Sisulu, who was our chairperson and also the president of the United Democratic Front nationally. Comrade Jackson was committed to participating in grassroots structures. He was a man of the people. When we were working together in the UDF, I encouraged him to come and live in Alexander Township, and he agreed. Comrade Jackson initially stayed in town, in Hillbrow, but he agreed to come and stay in Alex. And this allowed him to participate in local structures, something he was always passionate about. Comrade Jackson focused on building core organizations of the UDF to which he belonged at one point or the other. He was a leading member of the Witbank Civic Association and also led the local branches of the National Education Crisis Committee and the Detainees Parent Support Committee, both affiliate of the UDF. Comrade Jackson was also tasked with leading a campaign in solidarity with SWAPO in Namibia by coordinating more than 200 minibus taxis to help transport voters during the first democratic elections in Namibia. He was also part of the underground machinery of the African National Congress. Constant harassment, detention, including solitary confinement, failed to break his spirit. He remained resolute, firm in his belief that freedom will be achieved in our lifetime. After the liberation in 1994, Comrade Jackson went back to participate in ANC structures in Mpumalanga province. He served the province of Mpumalanga also as a member of the Provincial Executive Committee of that province. He also served as an MEC under the successive premierships of Dr. Matthews Posa and Comrade Thabang Makwetla. He has been a member of the National Executive Committee of the ANC since 2007. His clarity on and understanding of the history of the ANC, its policies, values, and traditions led him to being given the important task of being the voice and public face of the ANC as its spokesperson. In this role, he led our movement in the crucial battle of ideas and hegemony. Owing to his professionalism and commitment, he won many key aerial battles on behalf of our movement. When he went to Parliament, he was saddled with the task of steering the political program of the ANC as its chief whip. At the time of his passing, Comrade Jackson had taken another challenging task of being the voice and face of government, including being our nation's face in dealing with the coronavirus pandemic, which unfortunately claimed his life. To us, Comrade Jackson's life with the objectives of the struggle for a better life. In honor of Comrade Jackson, let us redouble our efforts to build a capable developmental state able to respond effectively to the daily struggles of our people. In particular, let us build an efficient, caring, compassionate government, a government of the people, for the people, by the people. Equally, let us work hard to renew and unite Comrade Jackson's movement, to which he dedicated his entire adult life. the African National Congress. Comrade Jackson would want us to continue building an ethical, caring, and listening ANC that is firmly rooted amongst the people. This is an ANC that is not arrogant and socially distanced from the masses of our people. Let us also be unwavering in our commitment as the ANC to lead the ongoing struggle for radical socio-economic transformation, whose progressive content includes the following: a sustained offensive on poverty, inequality, and unemployment, rooting out corruption, both in government and within our ranks, and building a developmental state capable of leading a sustained period of inclusive growth, empowerment, and job creation. Accelerating the inclusion of Black people, women, the youth, and people with disabilities in the economic mainstream. Managing our country's economy and public finance in a sustainable manner, and also forming transformative partnerships with the private sector to accelerate economic inclusion, growth, investments, and job creation. Program Director, equally, there is no better tribute to Comrade Jackson and many like him than for us to intensify the fight against gender-based violence, femicide, and the abuse of women, children, and young girls. Let us be single-minded in our effort to champion the cause of the victims of gender-based violence. In particular, let us be unrelenting in mobilizing men and boys in the fight against gender-based violence, as well as patriarchal and sexist attitude and practices. Comrades, let ours be a generation that will finally put an end to the scourge of gender-based violence, femicide, and the abuse of women, children, and young girls. We must also ensure greater financial and economic inclusion of women, as well as accelerate economic emancipation. Like Comrade Jackson did, let us also play our part in strengthening our country's response to COVID-19 pandemic. This includes wearing our mask at all times in the public, washing and sanitizing our hands regularly, as well as avoiding crowded places and events. We applaud the progress that is being made by our government in ensuring that we secure and roll out of the COVID-19 vaccine as speedily and as equitably as possible. Whilst waiting for the vaccine, we urge all our people, everyone, to continue to strictly observe the restrictions aimed at curbing the spread of COVID-19. To the family of Comrade Jackson, we say, we'll forever be grateful for sharing your son with us, your husband, Sister Mthembu, sharing him with the nation, and we are proud that for us, this is a life that became so priceless, central to our objective as a movement and the country. Comrade Jackson's legacy of hard work, approachability, and selflessness will remain forever engraved in our hearts and minds. Fellow compatriots, the Lion of the East has bowed out. He shall roar no more. As we bid this humble giant farewell, let us defiantly ask the question, death, cruel death, where is thy sting? Let us also, death in us today, rest in peace, Mthembu Velas. You leave behind a nation, National Congress, and a family that is proud of what you did. You have run. For you, it is mission accomplished. Hamba kahle Mthembu, ulale ngoqobo, mvelas omuhle. We will miss you. Hamba kahle, my brother. Hamba kahle, bro. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, TG. I'd like to thank all of the people those who were listening on stream. Thank you very much. Let us, as we close this memorial service tonight, remember all the frontline workers, the doctors and nurses and orderlies and surgeons and specialists and people who clean our hospitals and clinics. These are the people, together with the police and the army, teachers who are in the front line, and those are the people that we need to wear our masks for, so that we can protect them and make sure that they stay safe, because they are saving our lives. Good night, comrades, and thank you very, very much for participating in this memorial service.
You know, you write many stories that we don't agree with, but rest assured, we will defend your right to write those stories as ANC. That will do. That's what we do. And the ANC will be the last organization, even if us who fought for millions of people, will be the last organization to say that there must be no media freedom in this country. That's why the BNS of this world do not belong to the ANC state. They will never happen. They can't be. There is nothing that says that we must go to the journalist's house and do these silly things that they do. We condemn them in the history, and in our view, we call them intimidation. And where we spend intimidation is a criminal act.
Hamba, hamba kahle mkondo, wemkondo, mkondo wesizwe. Hamba, hamba kahle mkondo, wemkondo, mkondo wesizwe. Tina baba mkondo sizimisele, ukuwabulala, wona amabulu. Tina baba mkondo sizimisele, ukuwabulala, wona amabulu. Hamba, hamba kahle mkondo, wemkondo, mkondo wesizwe. Hamba, hamba kahle mkondo.
You know, you write many stories that we don't agree with, but rest assured, we will defend your right to write those stories as ANC. That will do. That's what we do. And the ANC will be the last organization, even if us who fought for millions.